What's up, everybody? Good morning. Thank you for joining us. This is Dan at Unicorn Riot. We do not have any upstream audio yet, so please stand by. We'll have it as soon as it comes in, but there's definitely nothing coming in yet. Thank you all for joining us. We're now on day 8 of the Kim Potter trial in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Thank you for joining us. But yeah, we're still not getting anything here yet. Not sure why. We do know that when they go to the autopsy material, we know that there isn't going to be audio from that. So it's possible this could be related to Daunte Wright's autopsy. I'm going to work around and see if I can find some audio from another source. And if I can pipe it in, I'll pipe it in, but it might be out of sync. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you for working with us on this.
And upon completion of that in 2009, I came to Minnesota, and I've practiced here ever since.
Do you have any board certifications?
I do.
And describe those for the jury, please.
Yes, I am board certified in anatomic pathology and forensic pathology.
And are you up to date with all of the requirements for being board certified?
I am.
Getting back to your role as an assistant Hennepin County medical examiner, could you describe for the jury what your job duties are?
My job duties revolve around establishing cause and manner of death and medical legal death investigation, particularly in cases of unnatural, unexpected, or violent deaths.
And does that include some investigation as well as some physical exams?
Yes, it includes quite a number of things. Investigation, autopsies. We do a bunch of outreach activities in terms of education, but again, it primarily revolves around identification of remains and establishing cause and manner of death.
And is the purpose of an autopsy to establish cause and manner of death?
That's one of the major goals, yes.
Could you describe for the jury the method and procedure that you follow generally when it comes to the autopsy process?
The autopsy itself, or the whole approach?
The approach.
So the approach starts with information gathering. We have medical investigators that work for us that collect information pertaining to an individual's medical history, events that may have unfolded that pertain or might impact the cause and manner of death, the interpretation of that. Meaning we'll get reports from first responders or from law enforcement agents or from next of kin or other witnesses, and we'll collect that information as we proceed. Once we get that information, or as we collect that information, we'll proceed on to the autopsy portion, which is an examination that is external and then internal. And I can detail those if that's what you're asking for.
Sure. You mentioned that there's an autopsy process that involves an external and an internal exam. Is there also toxicological components of that as well?
Yes. So the external portion of our examination includes viewing the body in an as-is state, noting any kind of clothing or medical interventions that might be present on the body, collecting hair and fingernails depending on the type of case, and also performing x-rays depending on the type of case, potentially to look for injuries or retained projectiles that might be present. Once we complete that portion of the as-is examination, we will remove the medical interventions, survey the body again looking for injury or natural disease, take photographs as we go to document any findings. Once we complete that portion, we will clean the body, repeat the examination, again scrutinizing for any forms of injury whatsoever or a natural disease, things that might help us determine cause and manner of death. And that is the external portion of the exam. Upon completion of that, we'll proceed to the internal portion of the exam, which is more what people think of when they think of autopsies. So we will examine the tissues of the body from head to toe internally. We'll go organ by organ, looking for injury, evidence of disease, or other findings. We will collect tissues for microscopic work. We'll collect tissues for potential toxicology studies. Sometimes we will perform, depending on the case, specialty examinations, looking at dissecting the wrists or the back or the neck, looking for injuries that might be hard to see externally.
And you indicated that you documented this process with photographs as you go?
Yes, all the way through the process.
And then do you ultimately draft a report as well?
And that is our goal.
And are there certain types of cases within your office that go through a secondary review process with another pathologist?
Yes, all children under 6 and all homicides are reviewed by a second pathologist.
And throughout the course of your career, approximately how many autopsies have you conducted?
I've conducted myself over 1,800 autopsies, and I've assisted or trained other individuals on hundreds more.
Dr. Jackson, I'm going to direct your attention to April 11th of this year. Did you respond to a scene with respect to a death investigation on that date?
I did.
And how did you come to be involved in that case?
So yes, that was a weekend. It was a Sunday, and I was en route to home after work, and I was a doctor on call. And it happened that sometime after about 5 o'clock, I received a call from one of our investigators that there had been an officer-involved shooting in one of our areas that we cover. An officer-involved shooting is the type of case where a doctor does respond with the medical investigator. So we arranged a meeting point and carpooled to the scene. And when we got there, we met up with one of the investigators from the BCA who had jurisdiction in the case.
So where approximately did you respond?
The site was in Brooklyn Center, and it was on 63rd Avenue North, I believe, at the corner of Catherine Drive.
And you indicated that you responded with someone else from your office. Who was that?
That was Stephanie Erickson, one of our investigators.
And approximately what time of day was it when you arrived on scene?
So I got the call after 5. The placard, which we fill out when we arrive at the site of the body, it was the time on that was 6:11 p.m. I believe.
And you indicated that photos are typically taken by your office. Does that include also photos of your arrival on scene and observations on scene?
Yes, part of our field examination includes photography of the scenes of the body and things around the body.
In addition to the photographs during the autopsy process?
Correct, and separate from.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would offer exhibits 99, 102, 103, 105, 107, 108, 110, 114, 116, 118, 119 through 125, 127, 141, 143, 145, 146 for demonstrative purposes, 147 through 149, 152, 155, 157, 158, and 160.
Is there any objection to those exhibits?
Objections were noted.
Yes, okay. And I ruled on those objections. Those exhibits will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm going to read the instruction on demonstrative evidence. The state is about to introduce a computer-generated animation. This does not serve as proof of any facts in itself. It is presented only to aid your understanding of a witness's testimony or other evidence here in court. If the animation is not consistent with your evaluation of the testimony or other evidence, you should disregard the animation and determine the facts from the underlying testimony or other evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. And just to be clear for the record, all of the exhibits are offered substantively with the exception of 146, which is offered for demonstrative purposes. At this time, I would ask that we put Exhibit 99 on screen, please. All right, Dr. Jackson, do you see a photograph in front of you?
I do.
And looking at that photograph, could you describe what you observed when you arrived on scene on April 11th?
Yes, we came in from the west. This is a view looking east, and what we see here as we approach the scene were two damaged vehicles, some debris in the middle of the roadway, a number of squad cars. Off in the distance there are police markers there. We did notice media present and a large crowd gathered beyond the barrier.
And then if we could put Exhibit 102 on the screen, please. You described observing vehicles. Was there also a tent location that was set in one of those vehicles?
Adjacent to this white vehicle, which was reportedly the decedent's vehicle, is a greenish colored tent protected over the body for privacy purposes.
And did you ultimately enter the tent?
We did.
And what information did you have at that time when you arrived on scene and went into the tent to look at the body?
We were briefed by a special agent from the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and got a little bit more information, namely that a short distance down the road from here, the decedent had been pulled over at a traffic stop and was injured, shot, and managed to drive his vehicle a short distance, and it crashed here at this point where you see it. The individual was unresponsive in the car, removed from the car by law enforcement, if I recall, and pulled a short distance to the grassy yard where the tent was erected over him sometime later.
And did you learn the identity of the individual who had passed away?
We had a tentative identity of Daunte Wright.
And was that identity later confirmed?
It was later by fingerprints.
If we could put Exhibit 103 on the screen, please. You indicated that you entered the tent. What was the condition of Daunte Wright's body at that time?
This is the view we saw, less the placard that we put on the body, but the body was lying in the grass. covered by a sheet, as depicted here. We could see some clothing emerging from the sheet, and there were some medical interventions and other wrappers on the ground.
If we could put Exhibit 105 on the screen, please. Could you describe what you did after observing the body with the sheet?
Yes, after this is the field examination portion of our work, and we removed the sheet, exposed the body as you see it here. Again, looking at different medical interventions that are present, the clothing that is somewhat disturbed, likely due to medical intervention, the process of medical intervention there. And we've placed our placard with pertinent information known at the time over the body for this identification photo.
And then you indicated that the placard had a time. Is that the 1811 that's noted there?
Yes.
And would that be 6:11 p.m.?
Correct.
And the ME staff noted there, S. Erickson. Is that Stephanie Erickson from your office?
That is correct.
Could we put Exhibit 107 on the screen, please? Did you make some closer observations of the body on the scene?
Yes, we did. We've taken a number of photos. This particular photo is a close-up of the left side of the decedent's body, and what's depicted here are a number of medical interventions. The one centered in the photo is a clear adhesive patch in occlusive dressing that's placed over a gunshot wound. There's some dark discoloration that you can see there in this image, and that is dried blood, essentially.
And after observing the body on scene, what did you do next? If we could put up Exhibit 108 so you could describe.
So after we complete our field examination, which entails, again, looking at the body and the items surrounding it and on it, we'll gently roll the body and examine the back, again, searching for potential injury. Once we have completed our field exam, we will bag the hands, which means putting paper bags over the hands to potentially preserve any trace evidence that might be there. Then we'll carefully put the body in a body pouch and seal it with a zip-locking tag, which is pictured here. This is the yellow tag going through the zipper pulls, and that's labeled with the decedent's medical, or the decedent's ME number, which we've established, the date and time of the bag seal, and initialed by the witnesses.
And when you describe the date and time of this seal and initialed by the witnesses, is this here that seal that you're describing?
Yes, it is.
And it indicates 4/11/21/1835. Would that be 6:35 p.m.?
Yes.
And what does that time indicate?
That is the time that I filled out that bag tag and sealed it on the pouch.
So would that have been the approximate time you had bagged the body?
Yes, directly. It would be 1 minute before that we put the body in the bag.
And then the initials noted there, whose initials are those?
Those are Stephanie Erickson, the investigator, and LJ, my initials.
And after you sealed up the body, what was done with the body?
So in the field, this is a picture of the bag as we saw it the following morning, but after we seal the bag in the field, the body is transported to our office, and we have a transport company that actually effected this move, and they arrived shortly after we did at the scene.
And was it the next day, on April 12th, when you began the autopsy process?
Yes.
Did you start with x-rays on the morning of April 12th?
Yes, in cases of gunshot wounds, we identify potential sites of injury and get x-rays of those so we can identify potential locations of bullets to make recovery easier the following day. So that did occur the morning of the 12th.
And if we could put Exhibit 110 on the screen, please. Could you describe for the jury what's shown here?
Yes, these are side-by-side images of Daunte Wright's chest, and you can see there's a number of things going on here. On the left-hand image, which is an anterior, posterior, or front-facing view, you can see a number of wires of medical interventions. On the decedent's right side, which is the left side in this view, we're looking at the images if we're looking at the patient. You can see a bright white object, and that is a retained projectile.
And if you could use, there's either a stylus like this or your finger to circle the item that you're describing on that image, please.
Yes, there I've circled the retained projectile.
after taking these x-rays, did you, slightly later in the morning, start the full autopsy exam process?
Yes.
And did that include, as you described earlier, examining the body as it was before cleaning and doing additional further examination?
Yes, that's standard procedure.
Could we put Exhibit 114 on the screen, please? Could you describe what's shown here, please, in Exhibit 114?
Yes, we take pictures of the body as is. So this is after I have broken the seal on the body bag, and without disturbing the body or any of the contents, we take the as is photograph. So this is a view of the lower half of the decedent's body. You can see jeans there. There's a single shoe on the left foot, a sock on the right.
And the condition of the clothing and body as it is depicted here, was that as it was on scene when you had observed the body the day before?
Yes.
Could we put Exhibit 116 on the screen, please? And what's shown here?
So this is a photograph that is one image more superior or towards the head relative to the picture we just saw. I've placed a privacy towel over the decedent's privates, and what we're seeing here again is a view of the body similar to that as we saw in the field. You can see medical interventions, clothing as we saw it in the field, and particularly medical interventions overlying gunshot wounds of the chest here.
So at this point, all of those medical interventions are still attached to the body, is that right?
Yes, this is the very as-is photograph, so we haven't manipulated those interventions in any way.
If we could put Exhibit 118 on the screen, please. Did you do some further examination of those seals that you had described and sort of continue to look in those areas?
Yeah, so as I alluded to earlier, we take photographs and document what we see initially, and then we remove in a stepwise fashion the various clothing articles and interventions. What we're looking at here is the injury on the lower left side of the chest, and I've peeled away the occlusive dressing that was placed in the field.
And could you please, for the jury, just describe the difference between an entrance wound and an exit wound?
In general?
In general, and then as applied to the images that we see.
Yes. In general, entrance gunshot wounds have a circular or oval appearance. There's usually some missing tissue in the center of the wound. There can be abrasions around the edge of the wound. This particular image that we're looking at here does show a wound that has those features. We will see a cleaned up version of this in subsequent images.
And when you say those features, is what you observe here consistent with an entrance wound?
They are, yes.
And then if we could put Exhibit 119 on the screen, please. Could you describe what's shown here, please?
So this is the picture of the right side of the chest, again with the occlusive dressing peeled back, showing an area of injury. It's difficult to see here due to the presence of blood, but this is the opposite injury.
And when you say opposite injury, would you characterize that as, how would you characterize that?
Yes, we will see that the injury on the left side of the chest is an entrance wound, and this will be shown to show features of an exit gunshot wound. It happened when we peeled back this dressing that you could actually palpate or feel the bullet directly below the skin adjacent to this wound. So that was a definite clue that this was the exit side.
And then after removing the medical interventions, removing the seals, documenting that process as you went along, did you ultimately clean the body and then continue to do further investigation or examination?
Yes.
If we could put Exhibit 120 on the screen, please. Could you describe what's shown here, please?
So this is a view of Mr. Wright's chest from the front, and pictured here are the entrance and exit wounds. May I mark?
Yes, you may.
These areas. So again, on the left side here and on the right side here are the gunshot wounds in question. we've looked at initially.
And what, if anything, is significant to you about the positioning of these two injuries?
Other than the fact that they are on the front side of the chest, the anterior side of the chest, and there's a little swelling around these wounds beneath the skin, suggestive of hemorrhage. Those are the major findings.
And I'll ask you some more about this as we go on to your internal examination, but looking at the body externally, did this give you any indication with respect to trajectory or a bullet path?
Yes, again, given the fact that there was a bullet present on the right side of the decedent's body and an entrance defect on the left side, it suggested a rightward progression of the bullet through the body.
And if you could just indicate with your finger the direction of travel that you're describing.
Yes, so a bullet entering approximately near this red dot, but below it would have traveled in this general direction here, as I've indicated.
And then if we could put exhibits 121 and 122 on the screen next to each other. If Your Honor, if you could clear the screen, please. Thank you. Could you please describe for the jury what's shown in exhibits 121 and 122?
Yes, so this is a left side view of the body in the left-hand photograph. We've looked at this from the front and with the occlusive dressing peeled partly off. What we're seeing here is the cleaned version. On the right-hand side is a zoomed-in image of the wound on that left side of the body.
And as part of your autopsy process, when it comes to gunshot wounds, do you typically look for things like soot or stippling on the body?
Absolutely. In addition to trying to assess what an entrance or an exit wound might be, we try to assess for clues as to range of fire. And sometimes these are present, sometimes they are not. When we have, for instance, evidence of a muzzle abrasion, so markings on the skin suggestive of contact with a gun, then we know it's a contact range of fire. If we find evidence of soot or gunpowder deposition or gunpowder stippling, which is a punctate or dot-like abrasions on the skin that occur based on the impact of gunpowder, we can say that it was a intermediate range of fire, so between contact and 2 or 3 feet at most. In this case, we found none of those identifiers, not on the skin and not on the clothing, so we settled on indeterminate range of fire, given the lack of specific evidence.
And just to clarify, when you say you saw none of those, you did not see soot or stippling, is that correct?
Correct.
And when you say indeterminate, maybe you could just describe to the jury, what does it mean to have an indeterminate range of fire?
So indeterminate range of fire simply means that we don't have specific clues as to a definite range of fire. So it leaves it open to the possibility of interpretation.
If we could put exhibits 123 and 124 on the screen, please, next to each other. Dr. Jackson, exhibits 123 and 124 are on the screen. Could you please describe what's shown here?
Yes, the image on the left shows a gunshot-related defect, on the right side of the body, and the image on the right is a close-up photograph of that same injury.
And how would you describe this? I know you had initially used the term maybe partial exit wound. Do you have another way of describing this injury as well?
Yes, let me just explain what a partial exit wound is. If the bullet goes in and out of the body, you have a classic exit wound. In this instance, because the bullet made a defect, made a hole in the skin, but did not leave the body, we call this a partial exit. And this occurs when there's not enough velocity for the bullet to escape the body. We see this on occasion. Other features of this injury that we see are areas of red-brown abrasion and that are present on the edges of the wound. And this is something that is consistent with what we call a shored exit. And this can occur when the skin is pinched between the bullet, which is pushing outward on the skin and rubbing against some other object. In this case, it's likely the clothing, the decedent's clothing, such that the skin gets pinched there and a rub spot occurs or an abrasion is formed.
Now, Dr. Jackson, before we get to your internal exam, I'd like to ask about the rest of the body. Did you also examine the rest of the body for injury?
Yes.
And if we could put Exhibit 125 on the screen, please. Could you describe what's shown in Exhibit 125, please?
Yes, this exhibit shows a close-up of the decedent's face and neck area. And on this image, which is a cleaned image, we can see areas of abrasion on the right nostril region and what is a laceration with some abrasion below the right lip.
And if we could put Exhibit 127 on the screen, please. Could you describe what's shown here?
Yes, this is a picture of the decedent's lower lip, and on that right aspect of the lower lip, you can see a laceration. This actually communicated with the abraded-looking lesion on the prior image.
And how would you characterize these injuries to the face that you saw in Exhibits 125 and 127 on the lip and the nose?
I would call these superficial blunt force injuries.
And when you say superficial, what does that mean?
I would say that these injuries are non-life threatening, particularly in with respect to comparison with the gunshot wound.
Are they consistent with the circumstances that you were aware of surrounding the time of death, including a potential vehicle collision?
Yes.
Were these injuries significant in any way with respect to your finding of cause and manner of death?
No, the blunt force injuries that we identified on the body did not contribute to the cause of death.
And did you also examine the rest of the body for other injuries as well?
Yes.
Did you find some other superficial injuries?
Yes, there were other superficial abrasions and some bruises or contusions.
Bruises and contusions, were those on things like the arms and legs?
Yes.
Could you just provide sort of a general overview of the types of things that you saw?
Yes, so small abrasions were found on the arm and forearm on the left side. For instance, these appeared much like rug burns in terms of their degree of depth. So again, superficial injuries. There were some minor abrasions on the right and left sides of the back, very much like simple scratches. And there were some contusions or bruises on the lower extremities as well, around the knees and the thigh on the left side.
Were any of those injuries that you observed that you described as superficial, were any of them significant with respect to your findings of cause and manner of death in this case?
No.
Would they all be consistent with the circumstances surrounding death, including a vehicle collision?
Certainly the collision or the process of extrication and resuscitation.
And when you discuss extrication, did you also observe some dirt or grass on the body as well before it was cleaned?
Yes, there were a few streaks, linear marks, as if someone had been pulled across dirt, yes.
And again, were those consistent with what you understood to be the circumstances surrounding the collision and the extrication from the car?
Yes.
All right, getting back to, what was the most significant injury with respect to your exam?
Far and away, the gunshot wound to the chest was the most significant injury.
Now, getting back to that gunshot wound, you told the jury a little bit about your external exam and your observations there. Was the trajectory in that bullet path further evidenced by the internal exam that you conducted?
Yes.
And then, with respect to that internal exam, did you follow that same protocol, that same procedure that you described earlier?
Yes.
And did that include examining the inside of the body and the organs as well?
Yes.
And conducting that part of the exam, were you also able to determine what organs had been struck by the projectile inside Daunte Wright's body?
Yes.
And then did you ultimately recover a projectile as well?
I did, yes.
And where was that projectile recovered from, approximately?
Yes, so that projectile was recovered from the skin, or below the skin on the right side of the chest wall near the fourth intercostal muscle, and that's between the level of the fourth and fifth ribs approximately.
If we could put Exhibit 141 on the screen, please. Could you describe what's shown there, please?
Yes, so this is an image. We've progressed to the internal portion of the examination, and this is a view of Mr. Wright's chest with the skin reflected. So what we're looking at are the ribs and the breastbone, and you can see areas of hemorrhage on the left and right side of the body that are consistent with the points of entry and exit of the bullet through the chest wall.
And could you just indicate on the screen where those areas of hemorrhage are, please?
Yes, so these are the dark areas present here and on the right side in this vicinity.
Okay. And then was there could you indicate the approximate area where the projectile was recovered as well?
Yes, the projectile would have been recovered. So the defect in the muscle on the right side is approximately here, so the projectile was recovered near where I made an attempted asterisk.
And then if we could put, just a moment, if we could put Exhibit 143 on the screen, please. Could you describe what's shown here?
Yes, so this might be a little bit disorienting. This is a view of the chest plate that we've removed, and it's viewed from the inside. So what we're seeing here are the ribs, and we're seeing the perforations through the muscles and the bone on the left-hand side. And there's a probe that's inserted to demonstrate the approximate path of the bullet. And again, this is inside the chest, so the left side is the decedent's left side, and the right side is the decedent's right side.
And do you, through the course of your work, sometimes use rods or probes like this to help you establish trajectory or a bullet path?
We do.
And if we could put Exhibit 145 on the screen, please. Could you describe what's shown here, please?
Yes, this is a review or an the exhibit that shows the damage to the front of the heart, and there is a gap in the tissue covering the right ventricle, the left ventricle, and the muscular septum that divides the two ventricles.
And when you say gap in the tissue, maybe you could just describe what you mean by that.
Yes, there is normally, instead of being able to see inside of the heart, there's tissue and blood vessels that would span this gap, this defect that we're seeing in the heart wall. And they're missing here in this image.
And in a normal heart, a healthy heart, would that all be covered up?
Correct. It would look more like the surfaces that you're seeing at the very top of the image.
Okay. We could put Exhibit 146 on the screen, please. Now, using this image, could you please describe what organs were impacted and what you observed on the inside of the body with respect to the trajectory?
Yes, I selected this diagram, and I would point out that it is a diagram in 2 dimensions, so it doesn't capture exactly the orientation in the body, but it does show the general pattern of injury. So there is an arrow superimposed over the heart and lungs depicted in this diagram. The entrance point was somewhere near the base of the arrow, and the bullet was recovered somewhere near the tip of the arrow. So you can see, even though that the wound direction was shallow through the chest, as we saw in the previous image, it did cross areas of the left lung, the heart, and the right lung.
Again, members of the jury, remember this is demonstrative evidence. It will not go back to the jury room with you.
Dr. Jackson, I know I didn't show you photographs of the lungs, but could you describe for the jury the damage to the organs in the body that you observed consistent with this demonstrative exhibit?
Yes, both the left lung and the right lung, the anterior portions, or the portions abutting the chest wall in the front, were damaged, almost a graze wound, but very superficially injured by the bullet. The majority of the injury was to the heart.
Did you also recover a substantial amount of blood from inside Mr. Wright's body during this process?
Yes.
Approximately how much blood did you recover?
So the combined volume from both sides of the chest, so around the right and left lungs and the heart, were over 3 liters of blood.
And 3 liters, why is that significant?
That's significant because an individual of Mr. Wright's size would have approximately 4.5 to 5.5 liters of blood in his entire body, and when you lose half of that rapidly, your condition becomes critical.
And when you say critical, what does that mean?
It's a life-threatening situation.
With respect to timing, was this gunshot wound, the injuries that you observed through the heart and the lungs, was that a survivable injury?
As a forensic pathologist, I would say no.
How long does it take for someone to die after being shot through the lungs and heart like this?
Injuries like this, we refer to survival times in terms of seconds to minutes in these types of injuries.
And with respect to loss of consciousness, how long does it take for someone to lose consciousness after an injury like this?
Well, one can lose consciousness within 10 to 15 seconds after blood supply is cut off to the brain.
Now, Dr. Jackson, do you have, throughout your experience as an assistant medical examiner, experience with a variety of different types of ammunition of different calibers?
Yes, that's part of our training.
And have you observed and recovered projectiles of both large and small caliber?
Yes.
If we could put exhibits 147 and 148 on the screen next to each other, please. You indicated that you recovered a projectile. Could you just describe what's shown here, please?
Yes, this is the image on the left and right show front and back views of the projectile that I've recovered. It's a clean view. What we're seeing here is a projectile with an expanded tip. It's a copper color jacketed projectile with a lead color core, and the image on the left shows the base view of the projectile, which had a measured diameter of 9 millimeters.
And with respect to your measurements, would that be consistent with a 9 millimeter round?
Certainly would, and those are measurements I made at the time of autopsy.
And when you describe the expansion or the condition of the bullet, maybe you can contrast that with other bullets that you've seen.
Well, I think what we're seeing here is a bullet that does show an expanded tip, and some people call this mushrooming, the appearance that we're seeing here. Others see a petal-like arrangement, and
Hey, we'll be right back. Sorry, the feed dropped. Should be back in just a moment. Sorry, everybody.
Case as well. Could you describe what's shown here, please?
yes, this is Mr. Wright's shirt, the shirt that he wore presumably under his jacket. I put it in place on a mannequin so that we could photograph it, and there are effects on the left and right sides depicted here. They're small, but they're
And when you say defects, could you circle them or indicate them, please, on the screen?
Yes, so on the left-hand image, I'm going to circle an area on the front left side of the shirt. I put a piece of white gauze behind the hole of the defect to illustrate where that is. And on the image on the right, which is the right-hand side of the shirt, I will circle this image here. That is an area of a defect in the fabric or a hole in the fabric.
So when you say defect, is a hole in this case?
Yes, they're interchangeable.
And were those holes consistent with the trajectory and the injuries that you observed?
Yes, they approximately recapitulate the injuries that we saw on the body.
And then if we could put exhibits 150, or just put exhibit 155 alone on the screen, please. Did you also examine a jacket as well that Mr. Wright was wearing?
Yes, this is the jacket as placed again on the mannequin.
And with respect to the red substance on the clothing, was that consistent with blood?
Yes.
And then if we could put exhibits 157 and 158 next to each other on the screen, please. Did you also examine the jacket for defects or holes?
Yes, and holes were found near the pockets on both sides of the front of this jacket.
And if you could indicate them on the screen.
Yes, so on the left, circled here, is a hole with frayed margins that is present near the front left pocket. And on the right image is a defect that I found in the lining of the pocket, the right pocket. And again, I put white gauze behind that to make it photo worthy.
Now, obviously, Dr. Jackson, the pocket line of someone's clothing might not be typically where you would expect to find the heart. Could you describe if these defects or holes would be consistent with clothing being bunched up or raised up on the body?
Yes, certainly, depending on where the clothing was positioned, they could be consistent with the pattern. And we do have them on the left and right sides of the garment. And again, that, like we saw in the shirt, it is similar and supports the same pattern we saw on the body.
Now, during your autopsy examination, did you collect a number of samples as well?
I did.
Things like blood and hair, nail clippings, and fingerprints? Is that
Yes.
right? And you indicated that you also collected these, this projectile as well as the clothing, is that right?
Correct.
And were those items all provided to the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension?
Yes, they were.
And then with respect to the toxicology testing in this case, did you also collect femoral blood and urine for toxicology testing in the afternoon of April 12th?
Yes, during the course of the autopsy.
And then did you order testing on those samples as well?
I did.
And what screens were done on the blood?
So we did a comprehensive screen on the blood, and that includes an expanded panel and additional studies. And our aim was to potentially survey for as many possible drugs as possible in this case.
Did that include looking for hundreds of drugs?
Yes, hundreds of drugs were sought after, yes.
And what, did you get the results of those tests?
We did.
And what, if any, compounds were found from the testing of the femoral blood?
Cannabinoids were the only thing found in the decedent's system.
And when you say cannabinoids, is that THC and its metabolites?
Exactly that, yes.
And are those related to marijuana?
They are.
Were those toxicology results that you received in any way significant with respect to your determination of cause and manner of death?
No, they were not.
And then on exam, did you find any natural disease or natural defect that would have caused Mr. Wright's death?
No, the only thing we found were injury-related changes associated with the gunshot wound.
And now, Dr. Jackson, based on your training and experience, did you ultimately determine a cause of death for Daunte Wright in this case?
Yes.
And what was the cause of death?
The cause of death in this case was gunshot wound of the chest.
And did you also determine a manner of death for Daunte Wright?
Yes, this is certified as a homicide.
And what is the definition of homicide with respect to your work?
Homicide is death at the hands of another.
And how did you make the determination that Daunte Wright died by homicide?
The examination of the wound and the history provided supported that he was shot by another individual and succumbed to those injuries.
And if we could put Exhibit 160 on the screen, please. Dr. Jackson, is this a copy of your office's final ME report for Daunte Wright?
Yes.
And that's based on your findings, but signed by the chief medical examiner in your office?
That's correct. That's routine policy. Yeah.
And with respect to manner of death, focusing on this area here, what is indicated as the manner of death?
Manner of death is homicide.
And what's the immediate cause that's indicated?
Gunshot.
I object to this. He's gone over this 3 times now. The cause and manner of death.
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
You may answer, Dr. Jackson.
Immediate cause of death is gunshot wound of the chest.
And then did you also indicate how the injury occurred?
Yes.
And how was that?
And we've listed here, decedent was shot by another person, and in parentheses, law enforcement officer.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Counsel, you may cross. You may cross.
Okay. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
With respect to the homicide and cause and manner of death, that has nothing to do with criminal statutes, is that right?
That is correct. Our manner is a medical opinion.
Okay, and it's quite obvious that the cause of death in this case was a gunshot wound to the chest, correct?
Agreed.
And I notice in your autopsy, your final autopsy, excuse me, you wrote 20-year-old man who was shot by a police officer after a traffic stop and subsequently drove his car a short distance before colliding with another vehicle. Is that the information you received when you came on the scene?
That's correct.
And the marijuana found in the system, did you send that to a lab or some other place to determine how much marijuana was in the system?
Well, as a part of the normal toxicology studies, they do quantify those numbers, the numbers of marijuana or anything they do find, yes.
And do you know what the quantify what the result was?
They're in my report.
Okay, and what are they?
If I may refer to my report.
Sure.
So in the femoral blood, we found 11-hydroxy delta-9 THC, which is a metabolite. The level present was 6.9 nanograms per milliliter. There was delta-9 carboxy THC, which is an inactive metabolite. This was present at a concentration of 120 nanograms per milliliter. And delta-9 THC, which is the active ingredient in marijuana, the level was 43 nanograms per milliliter.
And the active ingredient, what you mean by that is that's what affects you when you take the marijuana?
Yes.
And is 43 a high reading?
43 is a number within the normal range of individuals reported that use marijuana.
Okay. Use marijuana regularly or right before the death?
That's difficult to ascertain based on just the numbers alone.
I don't know if you answered my question. Is that a high reading based on your experience, toxicology-wise?
It's on the high end of numbers that I see, yes.
Thanks. And you testified that Mr. Wright was conscious for seconds after he was shot. Fair statement?
No, I said the injury he sustained, he could survive for minutes, seconds to minutes, and then if blood supply is cut off to the brain, then one can be rendered unconscious in a short time, matter of seconds.
Yes, that's what I meant. You do know in this case, from what you were briefed on, that Mr. Wright said, "You shot me." Did you know that?
No, I'm not aware of that.
Pardon me?
I'm not aware of statements uttered by the
In
decedent.
any event, as you reported, he drove off after the shot. Is that what you learned?
That was reported, yes.
And he could have driven off like that for up to a minute. Fair statement? He's the expert judge.
The objection is overruled.
So he could have driven off like that and been alive for up to a minute. Fair statement?
I would say that's possible.
Thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Is there any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Jackson, you were asked about what might possibly happen to a body under these circumstances. If you could just describe to the jury what physiologically happens to the body when a heart is shot with a gunshot.
In my profession, we don't see directly what happens to individuals. We are called in after the fact. But from my medical training, when an individual loses significant blood, they tend to become unconscious, or they could exhibit altered mental status.
And when you say loses significant blood, did you recover a significant amount of blood from inside Daunte Wright's body,
Yes,
consistent with blood loss that you're describing?
correct.
And when you see someone lose blood in the amount of 3 liters, what do you expect to happen to them physiologically?
I expect physiologically for the heart to be unable to pump blood to the organs, and I expect to see organs that shut down and loss of function occurring.
And when you expect to see that the heart isn't pumping blood and the organs are not functioning, what does that look like from the outside?
Could you clarify what you're asking?
Sure. If the heart is not able to pump blood to the organs and the body is losing blood, what happens to an observer? What does the observer see is happening to the body?
I think the person observing might see someone that appears unconscious or unresponsive, if that's what you're asking.
Yes. So you'd expect someone that was shot through the heart to be unconscious within a matter of seconds. Is that fair?
Projectile as leading, Your Honor. It's also repetitious.
The objection is sustained.
I'll move on, Your Honor. With respect to marijuana or the THC levels that you saw, you indicated that those were potentially on high levels of what you've seen. Is that right?
Yes.
In the course of your career of doing 1,800 plus autopsies, have you ever ruled a death, an overdose as a result of marijuana use?
I have not.
So when you say that these levels are insignificant with respect to your cause and manner of death finding, what does that mean?
That means relative to the injury sustained during the gunshot wound, there is no significant importance to the level of THC found in the decedent's system.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Anything further?
You understood, did you not, Doctor, that when I was asking about the marijuana, I was not implying that this was a cause of death. I was just asking what was in his blood, correct?
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
All right. You may step down. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Dr. Lauren Jackson from the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office.
The state may call its next witness.
Your Honor, this time the state calls Melissa Warren.
Okay, good morning. Please stand behind the witness chair and raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully testify in this case?
I do.
Please have a seat. Remove your mask. I'm going to give you some rules for testifying. The court reporter is taking down everything being said, so you have to answer with a yes or no instead of shaking your head. No, or uh-huh, because that's not a clear record. If you don't understand a question, let the lawyer know. Only one person can speak at a time, so wait until the question's finished before you answer. And finally, if an objection is made, stop talking. Don't answer the question unless I tell you to.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Counsel?
Ms. Warren, could you state your occupation for the record?
I work at the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension in the Forensic Science Lab, and I am the technical leader of our crime scene team.
How long have you been employed by the BCA?
I've worked there just over 11 years.
Could you please tell the jury about your education and training?
My education, I have a Bachelor of Science degree in biology from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. And my training in forensics, most of it has come from my employment at the BCA. I have training in mitochondrial DNA, which is part of our missing persons group, nuclear DNA, forensic hair comparisons, which I obtained out at Quantico, the FBI lab, and a lot of crime scene training. My training is to be a team leader is in evidence collection, processing, and report writing.
I just want to take a step back for a moment. Can you discuss the duties of the BCA Crime Lab generally?
Yes, our crime lab is made up mostly of scientists. They examine items of evidence to assist in investigations of criminal cases. And we have multiple different sections. So we have a biology section that focuses on DNA and body fluid identification. We also have a latent print section, firearms and tool marks, trace evidence, drug chemistry, toxicology, and then our crime scene team is also part of the forensic lab.
Is the crime scene lab an accredited lab?
Yes, we are.
And does the crime lab go through an evaluation process to maintain that accreditation?
Yes, we do.
And as part of that evaluation or audit process, is your work or proficiency or competency also evaluated?
Yes, it is.
And how often is that done?
We have a full accreditation audit every 4 years, and then a surveillance visit every year, and then we also do an internal audit every year.
Okay. As a crime scene team leader, could you describe your present duties?
Sure. As a team leader, I lead a team of scientists out at crime scenes. I lead them in everything from documentation of the crime scene, so that would be photography, video, also note-taking about our observations and diagramming. And then I lead them in crime scene processing, so things like latent prints, collection of samples for DNA, things like that, and then also evidence collection and packaging.
And overall, would you agree that you've been trained on a number of skills personally in forensic science?
Yes, I have.
And that would include these subject matter of collecting and handling evidence and collecting DNA and testing DNA.
Yes.
Would you also agree that you're trained in bloodstain pattern analysis?
Yes, I am.
All right. Now, you've testified in court as an expert before.
Yes, I have.
All right. Now, On what sort of cases does the crime scene team respond to?
Our team responds to homicides, death investigations, missing persons cases, officer-involved shootings or use of force cases, and also clandestine grave recoveries.
When you respond to a scene, what duties does that typically entail?
Responding to a scene, the duties I have are, again, leading the team, making sure that everything is documented appropriately. So overall photographs and video are taken, items of evidence are identified and marked as items of evidence, and those are also photographed. I lead the team in the processing of anything that we need to process depending on the scene circumstances, and then the collection of the evidence, the packaging of the evidence. I'm also responsible for ensuring that evidence is sealed appropriately back to our laboratory for secure storage, and then I coordinate with our agents on the forensic testing of those items.
Okay. I want to talk about one more topic generally before we get into the April 11th, and this is just about the process by which you collect an item and keep track of it. Could you describe how that work is done?
Sure. So when an item is identified at a scene and we decide that we're going to collect it, we put an item number next to it and have a photo taken of the item with that item number. That item number stays with that item from the crime scene through the forensic testing in the lab and all the way to court. Those items are marked on the packaging. We barcode those packages so that they can be tracked throughout the laboratory, and that's pretty much it.
Okay. Why don't we move on to April 11th of 2021? Were you on duty that day?
I was on call that day, yes.
Okay. And what did you respond to a communication that afternoon?
Yes, I did.
What did that communication pertain to?
I received a phone call and was told that there had been an officer-involved shooting in Brooklyn Center.
What did you do in response to that call?
I notified my team that's on call that we were going to be responding to a scene. I do that by sending out a text message, basically, and then we met at the BCA laboratory.
Why do you go to the BCA lab first? Pardon me, the BCA lab, that's in St. Paul, right?
Correct.
Why do you go to the BCA lab first?
We go to the BCA lab so I can get a laboratory case number for the case, and then we also take our crime scene response vehicle out to the scene. That vehicle has everything inside of it that we need for packaging and evidence processing.
Okay. And did you ultimately respond to the scene of the shooting in Brooklyn Center?
Yes, I did.
And was that at the intersection of 63rd Avenue and Catherine Drive?
Yes.
Do you recall when you arrived at the scene?
We arrived at 4:45 p.m.
Okay. And how many people were on your team when you arrived?
It was myself. I had my team member, a technician, an additional team member that I was mentoring for crime scene team leader training, and our photographer.
What did you do when you first arrived?
When we first arrived, we had a briefing with Special Agent Mike Phil.
And as you came to the scene, did you, based on your training and experience, sort of define what the scene actually was going to be for you?
Yes.
And what was that?
Mike Phil gave us information about
So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're watching day 8 of the Kim Potter trial. They were on Sidebar for a moment there, but it looks like they might be coming off. Maybe not. So we've been hearing from someone from, Dr. Lauren Jackson from the Hennepin County Medical Examiner, and this is Melissa Lauren, who's a forensic scientist at the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. So that's who we've been hearing from today. Thank you all for joining us. If you want more updates on the trial, more information about it, please head to our website, unicornriot.ninja. We do really appreciate your support. If you can donate, that makes a big difference. We're a nonprofit media organization, and we don't have the big resources of the big TV stations and stuff, so we try our best to keep bringing you this trial to the extent possible. And if you want to follow on Twitter, Unicorn Riot Live on Twitter, my colleague Alex has been putting the updates in there today. Thank you for joining us.
The objection is overruled. You may continue.
I believe when we left off, the question was, how did you define the crime scene based on the information you obtained?
The briefing information I was given gave us the overall location of where to focus on to look for items of evidence. And we were told that there had been a traffic incident and an officer had fired their firearm. After that, there had been a vehicle collision, and the driver of one of the vehicles was deceased on scene.
After you observed the general appearance of the scene, what did you begin to do?
So the first thing that I did was have a walkthrough of the scene so I could observe everything before we started any type of processing or documentation. Then I had overall photographs and video taken of the area, and then I started to identify items of evidence and mark those items so that they could be placed into a diagram, and we started collecting those items at that time.
At some point, were there items located at the scene that you did document and mark?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a specific area where you directed your attention at the scene?
We directed our attention around the Buick vehicle that Mr. Wright was said to have been driving, and also the area where we were told that the traffic stop had occurred.
And did you look for any evidence that you believed to be pertinent to the investigation inside the vehicle?
Yes, I did.
Did you locate something that attracted your attention at that time?
Yes, I did.
And what was that?
I found a cartridge case on the front driver's seat of the vehicle.
Okay. And are you familiar with the terminology of discharge cartridge casing, or DCC?
Yes, I am.
Is the item that you found frequently referred to as a discharge cartridge casing, or DCC?
Yes.
Could you unpack for the jury what a discharge cartridge casing is?
Sure. When you load a pistol with ammunition, the ammunition itself is actually called a cartridge. The cartridge is a cartridge case that's holding the projectile or the bullet. So when the firearm is fired, the bullet dislodges from the cartridge case and the bullet goes down the barrel of the gun. And the cartridge case is typically ejected out of the chamber of the gun, and they can be found at shooting scenes.
Okay. And you noted the location of this DCC?
Yes, I did.
And did you mark its location with an evidence marker?
Yes.
Am I correct that you assigned it evidence marker 7?
Yes.
And did you eventually collect the discharge cartridge casing?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And that was retained by the BCA throughout this investigation?
Yes.
And that maintained and retained that item number 7 throughout the investigation, correct?
Yes, it did.
Following your on-scene examination of the vehicle, what was done with that white Buick?
The white Buick was tape sealed and then towed to our BCA headquarters processing garage for further examination.
Okay. Was there another damaged vehicle on the scene?
Yes, there was.
What was done with that vehicle?
That vehicle was documented on scene and then was also towed, but not to our processing garage.
In addition to the discharge cartridge casing, were there other items that you collected from the scene?
Yes, we collected various items that we found along 63rd Avenue North.
Okay. And you documented and recovered those items as well?
Yes.
Okay. In addition to the physical items, did your investigation lead to an examination of Mr. Wright?
Yes, it did.
Okay. And at that time, when you arrived, he was placed under a tent?
Yes.
Okay. And are you aware that the Henner County Medical Examiner came to the scene?
Yes, he did.
And were you present when they were examining the body at the scene?
Yes.
Okay. And ultimately, Mr. Wright's body was transported away from the scene, correct?
Yes.
Do you recall what time that occurred?
He was transported at 6:40 p.m.
Okay. Now, did you create a scene map which shows the location of items that you recovered?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And does that also include the location of where you located item number 7, the discharge cartridge casing?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, the state offers Exhibit 161, scene map.
Any objection to 161? 161 will be admitted and you may publish.
Ms. Lauren, the jury has seen a couple of maps without markings on them throughout this trial. But could you describe the location depicted on this image at this time?
Sure. This is a top-down view of 63rd Avenue North, from east and west. And the location here is Catherine Drive.
Okay. And then I just want to direct your attention to the intersection of 63rd Avenue and Catherine Drive. Would you agree that there's a red number 7 at that intersection?
Yes, there is.
Okay. Could you just testify as to where that was located?
Yes, so the white rectangle in the diagram is depicting the location where the Buick sedan was, and the 7 is where our discharge cartridge case, item number 7, was collected from the front driver's seat of that car.
Thank you. You take that on, Mr. Moore. I want to go through a few photographs from the scene. In preparation for trial, did you review with me and recognize a series of photographs?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, at this time, the state offers Exhibits 162 to 174, noting that 166 and 167 are already admitted.
Okay. Any objection to those exhibits?
It would appear 169 and 170 are otherwise no objection.
Those exhibits will be admitted subject to over the objection of defense counsel. And you may publish, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, Ms. Lauren, I will show you Exhibit 162. And what I'll do, Ms. Lauren, is ask you to describe what's shown on the screen, image, to assist in understanding your testimony, okay? This first one, Exhibit 162, could you describe what you see on the screen?
This is a photo taken from 63rd Avenue North facing east. We're facing the area, you can see the white Buick sedan on the northwest corner of Catherine Drive. On the right, you see our BCA crime scene response vehicle is on scene. And in the center median there, you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but there is a traffic sign that's down in that area.
Let's move to Exhibit 163 to see if that assists. What is shown here in Exhibit 163?
This is that center median on 63rd Avenue North with the down traffic sign.
Okay, and could you assist the jury? Can you, with a pen or finger, circle where you see the down traffic sign?
Here is the broken metal, and here is the sign.
And I'm showing you you're identifying the sign right center in the middle of the picture, sort of toward the top third of the image, correct?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. Now Exhibit 164. You'd agree this is just, again, looking east down 63rd at the damaged vehicles?
Correct, yes.
Exhibit 65. Would you agree this is also looking east down 63rd at the damaged vehicles, but a bit closer up to see both of them on the screen?
Yes.
Thank you. Exhibit 166. What is shown here?
This is the front end of the Buick sedan, showing some front end damage, and the driver was open upon our arrival.
There appears to be some black equipment on the ground in front of the vehicle. Can you identify what that is?
It appears to be a police shield.
Exhibit 167, now, Mr. Miller. What is shown here?
This is the passenger front side of the Buick, showing a defect in the passenger windshield.
Okay. 168. What is shown here?
This is the front driver's side of the Buick, showing the front driver's side seat.
Okay. Exhibit 169. Would you agree this is just a image down, looking down at the ground of the front driver's seat?
Yes.
We're going to see a close-up in a minute, but in this image, can you see the discharge cartridge casing?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm now showing Exhibit 171. Could you tell the jury what you see in Exhibit 171?
This is the discharge cartridge case on the front driver's seat, marked as item number 7.
Okay. Exhibit 172. Would you agree that 172 is just an image of the top of the discharge cartridge casing after it was recovered?
Yes.
Okay. Exhibit 173. What is this shown?
This is a photo of a backpack that was outside of the front driver's door that we were told had been in the vehicle at some point in time.
And what did you do with that bag when you saw it?
We documented the bag, and I looked inside of it quickly to see if there was anything significant inside, and then I put it on the front driver floor to be towed back to the BCA with the vehicle and its contents.
Okay. And then Exhibit 174. And would you agree this is just the tent that was placed around Mr. Wright's body when you were present at the scene?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. You can take that down, Mr. Miller. Now, you reported that you collected that single discharge cartridge casing from the scene, and you eventually inventoried that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Your Honor, the state offers Exhibit 200, which I'm going to retrieve in a moment, the discharge cartridge casing.
Any objection to 200? Okay, 200 will be admitted into evidence.
Ms. Lauren, I'm going to show you a few things today. I'm going to try to walk close up to you, probably not hand you anything, just so that you have an opportunity to see it, okay?
Sure.
Ms. Lauren, I've just shown you Exhibit 200. Do you recognize what that is?
Yes, I do.
And what is it?
That is our BCA lab, item number 7, the discharge cartridge case from the front driver's seat.
How long did you remain at the scene?
We were there for just under 3 hours.
Prior to your departure, did you receive several additional physical items from another BCA agent?
Yes, I did.
And what agent was that?
Special Agent Sam McGinnis.
And what did you receive?
I received a toxicology kit from Officer Potter and 2 firearms, one from Officer Johnson and one from Officer Potter.
Okay. And when you received the 2 firearms, did you get information as to how to differentiate them?
Yes, the boxes had markings on them as to which firearm was which, and then there was also a receipt that had information on it that matched each firearm.
Okay. The condition of Sergeant Johnson's firearm, was it loaded, unloaded, or something else?
Sergeant Johnson's firearm was unloaded.
Okay. Did it have a magazine inserted in it?
No, it did not.
And Officer Potter's gun?
Officer Potter's gun contained the firearm and the magazine that had ammunition in it and a 1 cartridge in the box.
Okay. Did you assign those firearms evidence numbers as well?
Yes, I did.
And what was Johnson's gun identified as?
Item number 12.
And Potter's gun was identified as?
Item number 13.
Okay. And after you documented and identified those with crime lab numbers, did those leave the scene with you?
Yes, they did.
And were they later inventoried at the BCA?
Yes, they were.
And did you follow your typical protocol of photographing and documenting those items prior to actually putting them in the evidence vault?
Yes, I did.
Okay. If I showed you two photographs you took of Sergeant Johnson's firearm, BCA item number 12, would you recognize them?
Yes.
Okay. The state offers exhibits 167 and 177, photographs of Sergeant Johnson's firearm.
Any objections? 167 and 177 will be admitted into evidence.
Yes, please, first 176. Pardon me. To clarify, I may have misspoke. It's 176 and 177. Everyone's head nodding. I just didn't hear myself.
Thank you.
176. I'm showing you exhibit 176 at this time. What is shown on the screen?
This is Sergeant Johnson's firearm,
Okay.
item 12.
And the Post-it note may be heavily washed out on certain screens. Can you see a Post-it note on the top of this image which has a number on it?
Yes, I do.
And what number is identified there?
12.
12. Okay. The next exhibit 177, Mr. Miller. What is shown here?
This is the serial number of Sergeant Johnson's firearm.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's now move on to Officer Potter's firearm. If I showed you a series of photographs you took of that firearm, would you recognize them?
Yes, I would.
The state at this time offers exhibits 178 to 183, photographs of Potter's gun and ammo.
Okay, those exhibits will be admitted into evidence, and you may publish the photos.
Thank you. Let's start with exhibit 178. What do you see in exhibit 178, Ms. Lauren?
This is Officer Potter's firearm and the loose cartridge that's in the box, as well as the magazine that was loaded.
Okay. And exhibit 179. What's shown here?
This is the serial number of Officer Potter's firearm.
180. Is this just an image sort of the loaded magazine, which you can see has live ammunition in it?
Yes.
Exhibit 181. Is this the live round which is taken from the chamber of the firearm?
Yes, it is.
Exhibit 182. Is this just a close-up view of the magazine which shows that it's loaded with ammunition?
Yes.
And then exhibit 183. Could you explain to the jury what is shown in exhibit 183?
When I received the firearm and did this documentation, I removed all of the cartridges out of the magazine for photo documentation to inventory how many rounds were in the magazine.
And that's what's shown in this image?
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Lauren, if I showed you the actual firearm, Potter's firearm, would you recognize it?
Yes.
At this time, the state offers exhibit 199, Your Honor.
199 will be admitted. Members of the jury, I've already advised you that the gun has been secured and cannot be discharged. Okay.
Ms. Lauren, I'm approaching this exhibit 199. You can see the sticker there on the top of this box. What do you see in front of you?
I see Officer Potter's firearm. It is a Glock 9mm semi-automatic pistol and the magazine.
If I showed you the ammunition which was removed from Officer Potter's firearm, would you recognize it?
Yes.
State offers exhibit 202.
Any objection? 202 will be admitted.
Now, this might take a second for you to describe this, how this is set up, Ms. Lawrence. You agree there's an evidence sticker 202 on there, right?
Yes.
And then here, there's an individual live round. What is shown on this part of the exhibit?
This is the cartridge that was said to be taken out of the chamber of the gun.
Okay. And then there's a collection of live firearms in another part of this exhibit. Would you agree this is the live ammo that was taken from the magazine?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to another topic. You previously testified that Mr. Wright's white Buick was towed, right?
Yes.
Did you ever examine that vehicle again?
Yes, I did.
And when was that?
The following morning on April 12th at around 10 o'clock in the morning.
And where did that search occur?
That occurred at the BCA headquarters processing garage in St. Paul.
And when you began to search the vehicle, was it still secured with the tape that you placed on it the day before?
Yes, it was.
Who was present when you searched the vehicle?
It was myself. I had the same people that were on my team at the scene, except for the technician. So I had a team member that was in team leader training, and also an agent to do the photographs.
What actions were taken beyond photographs when you conducted the search?
So I marked items of evidence inside of the vehicle that I could see clearly and had photos taken of those. And then I also removed all of the contents of the vehicle and separated them out by the area they were found in, and then took photos of those areas and then marked additional items of evidence.
And you generated a report documenting the search?
Yes.
Okay. And when you searched the vehicle, you did take a substantial number of photographs, correct?
Our photographer did, yes.
Yep. And you've reviewed a set of 7 photographs prior to trial, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state offers exhibits 184 to 190 photographs of the inside of Wright's vehicle at the time of the search warrant.
Is there any objection to 184 to 190?
We checked 184 to 180.
Oh, okay. All right. I've already made rulings on that. I'm going to admit 184 to 190 over the defense objections, and you may publish.
Thank you, Your Honor. Prior to showing Exhibit 184, what is the value of taking photographs in the crime lab facility rather than on the scene?
When it's possible, which is usually with vehicles, we just have a more controlled environment in our processing garage. We have better lighting, plus we don't have anyone from the general public around to see the contents when we put them out.
Okay, thank you. 184, Mr. Miller. Could you describe what's shown here?
This is the driver's seat of Buick.
Exhibit 185. What's shown here?
This is the front driver floor of the Buick, showing a shoe.
186. What is shown on Exhibit 186?
This is a photo of the Buick taken from the rear driver's side, showing the center console area.
So you'd agree this photograph is essentially taken as someone would be standing outside next to the rear driver's side door, looking past the front driver's seat into the front area of the vehicle, correct?
Yes.
187. What is shown in Exhibit 187?
This is a photo of the interior of the vehicle taken from the perspective of the front passenger side.
Exhibit 188. What is shown here?
This is the front passenger side of the vehicle, showing defect in the passenger side window.
Did you more closely examine the defect in the front passenger side window?
Yes.
Did you recover any physical evidence from that interior of the wheel?
Yes, I did.
And what was that?
I recovered apparent hair from the interior of the defect.
Exhibit 189, Mr. Miller. What is shown here?
This is the front passenger headliner area from the perspective of the driver's side.
Okay. And that was a very clear description to me, but I've seen this image, so I want to be clear. Would it be accurate to say the perspective of this image is perhaps someone who is maybe even seated in the driver's seat or in that area of the driver's seat looking up at what I'd call like the ceiling of the vehicle above the passenger seat?
Yes, that's correct.
All right.
All right, counsel, we're going to take a break, a 20-minute break. Okay. All right, members of the jury, 20 minutes. Okay, you may step down. All right, counsel, let's take a break.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us. This is Dan at Unicorn Riot. We really appreciate your support. For all the chatters out there on Facebook and YouTube, thank you for being respectful. Please try not to feed the trolls. We updated our landing page on our website, unicornriot.ninja, if you want to take a look at that. The trial page is up there at the top of the page. The Kim Potter trial page there. So we've got a quick update for day 8. So we've been hearing from the BCA forensic scientist, Melissa Lauren, and earlier today was Dr. Lauren Jackson, the Hennepin County medical examiner, assistant medical examiner. So we've been hearing from those officials today about the case. If you can support our work at unicornriot.ninja, that's really appreciated. The donate link is up there at the top in the menu. We also, by the way, if you hit the live link up there at the top, you can reach our live videos when we go live. We appreciate your support. Thank you for sharing our material out there, right? Like, we're a small nonprofit media. We don't have the hardware or the, financial resources of a television station. So, we try our best to bring everything to you. And, thank you today. We also have Nico helping out. Alex has been helping out with the tweets. So our, excuse me, that is not the correct URL, excuse me. And our Twitter account is at Unicorn Riot Live, is our sort of secondary Twitter account. And so we've been pushing updates to Unicorn Riot Live. I think I can refresh that. Let's see. Yeah, so today, it's been just, very disturbing material. I've been trying to throw the notice out there on that, and the defense doesn't want this material out there, right? They don't want to have the jury connect with sort of what has happened in the case. So that is definitely part of this whole equation. So let's see. So we have about 15 minutes here as we're waiting. I'll try not to let the funny music bombard you. One moment. Okay. And all right, so yeah, we're waiting about 15 minutes. So I'm gonna go back. On Friday, we were running some footage from April 11th. We were about 90 minutes into kind of a long sequence there. And we were, anyway, so our reporter, Nico, was on site in Brooklyn Center and kind of, filming people, talking to people, trying to find out what was going on. This was in the immediate hours, right after this tragedy happened. So we'll run that for a little while. We've got about, I think, 15 minutes left or so, and then as soon as that comes back, we'll bring it back. So, thanks for bearing with us through, again, little technical snags, bumps that happen. We're just going to keep trying to do our best to sort of keep bringing this out to you. So we do really appreciate your support, and please let your friends know about us. Again, we're not a huge organization, so we do really count on everybody's help to kind of bring our work out to the masses out there. And if you want to see more of this material from that immediate aftermath, this is the post that we had on our website, which is associated with the following clip that I'm going to play. So we'll let that run through the break, and then we'll come back to it when court comes back. Thank you very much.
So again, this is for Daunte Wright. He was 20 years old, killed by the police. Crowd still hasn't left. Chanting "Fuck 12."
Fuck 12! Fuck 12! Fuck 12! Fuck 12!
We're gonna abolish you!
Yeah, fuck you, kid!
We're gonna abolish you!
We're gonna hate you!
Fuck 12!
Fuck!
I don't my dick!
Shut the fuck up, pussy! If you want to be heard, you need to speak louder, pussy!
Hey, you want to talk at all?
Back in the day to go back in there.
Andre Freeman, you were one of the first on the scene.
Yes,
Can you talk about what you've seen throughout today?
A lot of confusion, discontent. The police have messed up again. The Brooklyn Center Police Department have killed another person out here. We are tired. We are tired of dealing with the systematic issues time and time again with the Brooklyn Center Police Department. I grew up here. I grew up in this city. And let me tell you, the police department have never helped people like me, have never really helped this community. They've been detrimental to this community. They've hurt this community for decades. This isn't the first, and this won't be the last.
Thank you for that rundown. It pretty much sums it up. Is there anything else you'd want to say from what you've seen today, the police interactions with the community?
The police interaction with the community have been shit, excuse my language. They have not done. They just fired. The Brooklyn Center Police Department just fired on peaceful protesters with a canister gas that's right behind that gentleman right there. Fired on us for no reason. Standing here, chanting. They came around the backside of that tree line and fired a CS canister at peaceful protesters. And fired this at someone too. Look at that.
All day. That's all they do.
Look at that. They fired this at people. They fired this to hurt peaceful protesters. They have done nothing to help this community. They have not come out to de-escalate. Everyone, have the police come out here to de-escalate you. No. You heard it first from the voter, the resident. Thank you.
Thanks, Andre.
Yeah.
This is Andre Freeman. You can catch out to his stream, AFS, I think, on Facebook.
And this was from back on April 11th.
People, again, these two gentlemen were actually both also hit numerous times by marker rounds, that blue foamy top of a bullet that you saw.
May I have your attention, please?
Police asked for people's attention.
Filing on behalf of the Brooklyn Center Police Department.
Fuck you! Nobody fucking cares!
Fuck you! Oh, you guys want to go to sleep? Oh, you guys want to go to sleep? Oh, okay. Okay. The department has declared this assembly unlawful under the orders of the state of Minnesota.
Another unlawful assembly. It's getting met with projectiles and booze. Just water projectiles.
Minnesota Statute 609715 prohibits remaining present in an unlawful assembly. This includes the media.
You can hold us responsible when we break the law, but we can't hold you responsible when you break the law. Is that how it goes? I just want to make sure I understand it now. You shooting people in the back.
You are hereby ordered to immediately disperse, which means leave this area. Please do so by all directions, north.
And they're shooting right at the apartment building. Oh, it's a dud! Ah! It's a dud!
That thing went right between us.
Yeah.
If you do not cease your unlawful behavior and disperse immediately, you will be arrested. This includes the media.
I don't give a fuck what you say anymore.
They're calling out the media too, saying that they must disperse.
Fuck you guys.
You have 10 minutes to leave the area.
They're giving a 10-minute
Thank you for your
dispersal order this time. Or again, they gave one earlier.
Hey, welcome back.
Firework just went off in the intersection. People are taking care of the street light. Again, this is just going to push people and the crowd and people's aggressive reactions towards different areas of the city and different corporate institutions. That's a guarantee. We already see that some places are getting expropriated. They're now shooting at the people who are trying to move off the police or the street sign. You see all that smoke on the apartment building that's next to 6640 right here. They're just getting smoked out with a bunch of tear gas. You see there's people watching from their balconies of this building. The police munitions almost shot into the building a few times when they're shooting at an upward trajectory. Sort of drizzling out here with the weather. Is about 50, 60 degrees, 40, 50 degrees, sort of chilly, maybe less than that. See a gentleman in a yellow blazer vest is still sitting up there. We're having some connection difficulties, sorry about that. I'm gonna try to see what's up.
You need us to disperse, or do you just need us to stop watching you? How does it feel to be held accountable?
Show up here terrorizing families. Fuck you. Fuck all you. You don't have phone numbers. You have addresses. You are just as comfortable as I am. Fuck you.
We have a little audio interference in our feed from there. Thank you all for watching this recording from our April 11th stream. I think Nico was changing the batteries at this point in the feed, so I'll turn the audio back on when it dies down again. When we do these long streams, we have to, you know, change the batteries on the fly.
Hold on, y'all. I gotta connect to a different network.
They pushed it back to the street. But you see right there where the truck is, we were all in the parking lot. And the police line went back to the building, back to the door. So they had a police line going across the parking lot, and they were there on that side of the building. And then they pushed the door out the parking lot, and now they have a police line going all the way from the fence.
May I have your attention, please?
Fuck you!
I am Captain Kryling from the Brooklyn Center Police Department.
Captain, don't kill yourself! Don't fucking die, kid!
The police department has declared this assembly unlawful under the laws of the state of Minnesota.
Sorry about that, y'all. I had to reconnect some things. Hopefully the connection's a little better.
Minnesota statute 609715
Motherfucker, we leave!
I forget! Could you tell me that one? Fucking rules, fuck y'all!
You are hereby ordered to immediately disperse, which means leave this area. This includes the meeting.
We all want to kill you!
Please do so by making your way to the north, to the east, and to the south.
Not till we figure that bitch down!
If you do not cease your unlawful behavior and disperse immediately, you will be arrested. This includes the media.
We got a big talk, do ya?
You have 3 minutes to leave the area.
We don't care! We're fucking here!
Thank you for your cooperation.
Suck my dick!
Swear to God, if you knew, you didn't give us enough time! 11:38, everybody! Remember that! We got nothing to lose! We're sick of these murders!
Fuck! Don't run! Fuck! Don't run!
your attention, please? I am Captain Kryling, representing the Brooklyn Center Police Department. The police department has declared this assembly unlawful under the state of Minnesota. The laws there under Minnesota Statute 609715 prohibits remaining present at an unlawful assembly. You are hereby ordered to immediately disperse, which means leave this area. Please do so by making your way to the north, to the east, and to the south. If you do not cease your unlawful behavior and disperse immediately, you will be arrested. You have no time remaining, and you must leave now. This includes the media. Thank you for your cooperation.
Looks like the police have taken up the street up here. I appreciate you, man. A large line of police force has come down 67th, coming up to Humboldt. A lot of people have taken off, left the area. The police have declared another unlawful assembly. The gentleman in the yellow vest has been up here on the front line the whole time. Got shot numerous times by Les Lethals. One of them in the ear. Some folks trying to go grab him, make sure he's safe. How you doing? Did you see all the cops up there? Yeah. They got a big unit. So again, now the police are moving this direction from, they're sort of flanked the protest area of the police station. They're actually like looking into the apartment building that's next to them with their flashlights. And they're moving forward now. I think it's the state troopers. Somebody said National Guard, I do not know.
This was recorded April 11th, 2001. We'll be bringing you back to court as soon as court.
A lot of people have dispersed.
We're just playing this
again,
recording from the night after all this happened.
Expect. Ooh, police are shooting off to the side. Expect expropriation of different corporate institutions tonight, probably, as already been seen a little bit. That's police munitions that are being shot. More police munitions, more. They're shooting them into the sky again and across the street. Gentleman is still over here. Every car that drives by, they're using their light to watch it. We saw during the uprising.
we're back live. This is day 8 of the Kim Potter trial. We're back live now. The jury's coming back in. They're all standing up for it. And you can see the defendant, Kim Potter, over there on the right, former Brooklyn Center police officer. And Earl Gray is closer to the center, next to Potter, and Paul Eng is on the far right, and their assistant is in the back, and then the state is on the left.
Okay, please be seated. Mr. Lyson, you may.
Thank you. Prior to the break, Ms. Thorne, I think we were on our last image that had been admitted. That would be Exhibit 190. And you'd agree that is a photograph of the back seat from the driver's side?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, in addition to searching and photographing the vehicle, did you spend any time examining the apparent blood evidence in the vehicle?
Yes, I did.
Can you describe what you did?
We have a chemical test that we use on stains that are visually consistent with blood. We take a small sample of the stain, add some chemicals to it, and if it turns pink, it indicates that blood is present. If it doesn't turn colors, we conclude that blood was not detected.
Did you identify certain locations and then swab them to obtain samples of that?
Yes, I did.
And could you explain what you do with those swabs once you collect them?
Once the swabs are collected, we package them in manila envelopes, seal them, put a barcode on them as an inventory, and then securely store them until they can go up to the DNA section.
When you collect a a swab of blood, do you assign the location where you collected that from with another specific number?
Yes, we use item numbers for that as well.
Okay. And do you take photographs that mark those locations so we can look back at images you took to identify specifically where you took samples of the blood in the car?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, Your Honor, the State offers Exhibits 191 to 198, photographs of blood samples taken from the vehicle.
Any objection to 191 to 198? Those exhibits will be admitted into evidence, and you may publish.
Okay. Now, Ms. Lauren, you'd agree that essentially these 8 exhibits are in pairs. There are 2 photographs per 4 blood samples that you collected, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Let's look at the first blood sample. This would be starting with Exhibit 191. Could you describe the location of this blood sample?
This is on the front driver's seat, item 22.
You can see that it's item number 22 in the front driver's seat, yes?
Yes.
Okay, let's just look at Exhibit 192 now. And you agree that is just a close-up image of that item, that blood item number 22?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Exhibit 193. What is shown here in Exhibit 193?
These are blood stains on the front passenger dashboard marked as Area A.
Okay. Let us look now at Exhibit 194. Now, you said that was Area A, but is there a specific item number identified, a specific blood sample identified with a particular BCA lab item number?
Yes, one stain was collected from this area as item 25.
Okay. Exhibit 195. Okay, what area of the vehicle is shown here?
This is that passenger side headliner or ceiling of the vehicle marked as Area B.
Okay, now this image is from a slightly different perspective than we saw the headliner from the last image, correct?
Correct.
Would you agree that this image perhaps could have been taken by someone leaning down outside the passenger side door, looking up at the ceiling of the car?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Exhibit 198. Strike that. 196. What is shown here, Ms. Lauren?
This is a blood stain that was collected from that passenger side headliner as our item number 26.
Okay. Now exhibit 197, Mr. Miller. You'd agree this is an image looking into the rear of the vehicle?
Correct.
Okay, let's go to exhibit 198. This is zooming in on a particular blood sample, correct?
Yes.
And what item number is this?
This is our item number 27.
Okay. You can take that down. Speaking of your lab generally, would you agree that the crime lab conducted some forensic testing of certain items as part of this investigation?
Yes, they did.
And some DNA testing did take place?
Yes.
And the item numbers assigned by you of those blood samples stayed with the swabs of those blood samples throughout the investigation?
Yes.
And the DNA testing was performed by your colleague, forensic scientist Eric Copen?
That is correct.
Okay. In addition to the DNA testing, am I correct that further testing at the BCA included examination and analysis of the firearm that we looked at today?
Yes.
And that examination was performed by another scientist in your lab, Travis Milan?
Correct.
Okay. And both Mr. Copen and Mr. Milan would be in a position to describe their work specifically, correct?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions at this time.
Any cross counsel?
Good morning, Ms. Martin.
Good morning.
Loren, do I have that right?
Lauren.
Lauren, thank you. Pauling is my name. I'm one of the lawyers for former Officer Potter. Earl Gray's with me, and Amanda Montgomery. I have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
You were at the scene, and you've described a collection of a lot of evidence, which was your responsibility, correct?
Yes.
And you made a list of all the evidence that you collected, and they are reflected in reports that you authored, correct?
Yes.
And one of the pieces of evidence that you collected is labeled number 21 on your report, and it's denoted as, quotes, one plastic bag containing evidence classified as plant material. You remember collecting that, don't you?
Yes, I do.
And the plant material was taken from the driver's floor and the center console. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you did that, I assume, or one of your techs did that, right?
Yes.
And you found that the plant material was familiar in terms of its appearance, was it not?
Yes.
It was marijuana, at least visually, correct?
It appeared to be consistent with that, yes.
And then you also found another piece of evidence, number 24, and the type and packaging, according to your report, is one plastic bag containing evidence classified as an item of evidence. And you described number 24 as a, quotes, digital scale from the center console. Is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Sidebar.
They're going on Sidebar there. As you can see, they use wireless microphones and headsets to communicate with less risk of COVID contamination. We've been hearing from Bureau of Criminal Apprehension forensic scientist Melissa Lauren. This is the cross-examination by Paul Eng, the defense attorney And, you know, as we're hearing, they're really dwelling really hard on the supposed issue of cannabis contraband around the vehicle. And once again, I'll draw people's attention to the case of Philando Castile. And Geronimo Yanez was the officer that killed Philando Castile, and he gave some, you know, rather absurd testimony to two BCA agents in that killing, saying, you know, that, oh, if this person was using marijuana, then I feared for my life. And so my understanding is that Earl Grey was a defense attorney in that case as well. And so it's not surprising that Earl Grey would direct a defense to around a marijuana panic. And we've been seeing that almost every day. It's been an element of the case here. And it's not clear what the logic is exactly, except that they think it might work with the jury, I'm assuming. But it just jumps out as a very strong element of what's going on here. My colleague is also mentioning that that the defense has been making motions that the state is biased against Officer Potter for mentioning the police union. So the police union stuff has also been another thing, the issues raised in the defense. But we heard from the forensic examiner, the other person named Lauren, I'm sorry. We heard from the forensic medical examiner that it wasn't some extraordinary, metric of cannabis or whatever, but nonetheless, defense attorneys are going to try to find whatever they can to try to divert the issue. So, but again, I would just suggest looking at how that played in the Geronimo Yanez case with Philando Castile. I think that's directly comparable as to explaining why this is happening. So, just wanted to mention that. And again, head to our website, unicornriot.ninja. We do have a trial landing page. I'll just pop that up really quick. And so we have the trial landing page there. Please share that around. Let your friends know. We really do count on everyone to kind of let people know what we're doing. So we appreciate that. As we wait here for this extended sidebar. And again, we're moving into cross-examination. This is the second witness today. So we're waiting on that. And we'll be going down off the stream during the lunch break, and we'll sort of have some downtime. We started putting our videos on Vimeo. I didn't have it ready this morning, but I think we'll try to put it up again. So you can definitely subscribe to us on Vimeo. Our link on our Vimeo page is up there, up in the upper right corner. Way up in the corner, we got a link to all our different social media services up in the upper right. So please do subscribe to that. We'd appreciate it. Likewise, you can subscribe to our email list, which is down at the very bottom of our website. That's much appreciated. We don't send out too many emails, but we do want to be able to reach people. The social media algorithms don't let us reach everyone all the time. So we're live today on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter Live. And our tweets are going out live right now. Thank you, Alex, for cranking out the tweets today. That's at Unicorn Riot Live. So please follow that. That's our new secondary Twitter account. Thank you, Alex, today for working on that. Thank you, Nico, for helping with other aspects of support. Again, and thank you to the chatters. Please be respectful. And we'll come back now, finally.
The objection is sustained. The jury will disregard the question that was just asked. You may continue, Mr. Ing.
Ms. Lauren, did you test the plant matter as a part of your lab process?
No, I did not.
Do you have any reason to believe that, given your experience with the BCA, that it was not marijuana?
Objection calls for speculation.
I'm going to let you answer. Go ahead.
I don't perform drug testing, but the visual appearance allowed me made me decide to collect it, yes.
Because you thought it was contraband?
It was plant material that looked familiar to me.
And as a part of your BCA process, you also took a blood sample from Officer Potter that evening, or had someone from a hospital do it. Is that correct?
A toxicology sample was submitted to me, yes,
And that was tested as well by the BCA, right?
by a different scientist. Yes.
And nothing was found in her blood. Is that correct?
I actually didn't review the toxicology results.
No further questions.
Is there anything further from the state?
State has no redirect.
No?
State has no redirect.
Okay. All right, you can step down. The state may call its next witness.
Your Honor, this time the state calls Agent Greg Peterson.
Okay, Agent, will you please come forward? Stand behind the witness chair and raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully testify in connection with this cause?
Yes, I do.
Please have a
Thank
seat.
you.
Please remove your mask.
Thank you.
State your full name and spell it.
My first name is Brent, B-R-E-N-T. Last name is Peterson, P-E-T-E-R-S-E-N.
All right, couple things to keep in mind. When testifying, the court reporter is taking everything down. Only one person can talk at a time. Wait till the question's finished before you answer. Yes or no questions instead of shaking your head. No or uh-huhs. If an objection is made, stop talking immediately. Don't answer the question unless I tell you to. And if you don't understand the question, please ask for clarification.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Counsel?
Could you state your occupation for the record?
I'm a special agent for the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the BCA.
How long have you been with the BCA?
5.5 years. I started in June of 2016.
What unit are you currently serving in?
I'm in our Force Investigations Unit.
Now, you're a licensed peace officer, correct?
Yes.
And you take continuing education courses to maintain that license?
Yes.
Prior to working for the BCA, did you have other law enforcement experience?
Yes.
Could you explain that experience to the jury?
From 2001 until 2005, I was a police officer for the University of Minnesota Police Department here in Minneapolis. And then from 2005 until 2016, I worked for the Rochester Police Department in Rochester, Minnesota, where I was a patrol officer, investigator, and a sergeant, a patrol supervisor.
You were promoted to a detective level as early as 2008, correct?
Correct.
In regard to the BCA, you arrived in 2016. Could you describe the roles that you've had working with the BCA?
Sure. Initially, I was hired to work in what's known as our predatory crimes section, which dealt with primarily child pornography, predatory offenders, human trafficking. In November of approximately of 2016, I transferred to our homicide unit, or homicide section, here in the metro area.
In all of that experience, dating back to 2008 with Rochester, through all of your time in the BCA, that's all been investigative?
With the exception of 2 years, 2014 to June of 2016, when I was back on patrol as a sergeant with the Rochester Police Department.
Okay. Now, as part of your work in the Force Investigations Unit, you'd agree that you work on officer-involved shooting cases?
Yes.
Agent Phil has told the jury about your unit. I just want to know a little bit about your experience in that unit. In the 6 years you have been with the BCA, how many officer-involved shooting cases have you worked on?
I'm right up around 73 use of force investigations.
Okay, so use of force investigations, do all of those include fatalities?
No.
How many of those included fatalities?
I don't know.
Okay. How many of those cases have you been the lead agent on?
13.
And is there a role other than lead case agent which you have served in?
Yes.
And what is that?
Sometimes we have co-agents, co-lead agents. Other times it'll be something as simple as my only role will be to attend an autopsy or something like that.
Okay. In support in various ways?
In support, correct.
Okay. For example, in the case involving Kim Potter, what was your role?
In support of the case agent.
All right. I now want to talk about this case, April 11th of 2021. Do you recall that day?
Yes.
What were you doing?
I believe it was a Sunday, so I was at home and off duty.
Did you receive some information that prompted a response from you?
Yes.
And what was that information?
I was notified with other members of my team that there was an incident in Brooklyn Center for which we've been requested to investigate.
Okay. And would you agree that essentially that information prompted you to respond to 63rd and Catherine and then Brooklyn Center to assist Agent Phil in the investigation of this case?
That's correct.
Okay. And would you agree you arrived at scene about 5 p.m.?
That's correct.
At the time of your arrival, was there any personnel from the BCA present?
Yes.
And would that include both Agent Phil and other members of the crime lab team and other agents from the BCA?
That's correct.
What actions did you take at the scene upon arrival?
When I got there, I parked outside of the perimeter that had been established. I met with Agent Phil, who is my supervisor, as well as with Melissa Lauren, who is our crime scene team leader, and just kind of information was a little vague at the time. I got there, but more was coming in. Just kind of got an overview of the scene. I made some observations of the scene also.
Yep. Did you spend any time attempting to find witnesses?
I did, yes.
Okay. And was one of the witnesses that you ultimately spoke to a Carrie Blansky, a neighbor?
Yes.
Did you later obtain a video evidence from Ms. Blansky?
Yes.
Okay. With regard to a vehicle that was at the scene, a white Buick, did you assist in towing that vehicle?
Yes.
And where did it get towed to?
BCA headquarters in St. Paul.
Okay. And do you remember how long you were at the scene?
Probably about 2 to 2.5 hours.
Okay. So you left perhaps around 7:30 p.m.?
That sounds right, yes.
All right. Now, in addition to the work that you've done in this case at the scene, or you did at the scene, did you gather additional evidence during the course of the investigation?
Yes.
Okay, I want to talk about some of those tasks, but not all. Do you recall continuing your work on the case on April 13th by going to the medical examiner's office?
Yes.
Why did you go to the medical examiner's office?
There were a few items that were available for us to pick up that we needed to get some of those submitted into our laboratory for further testing.
And did you pick up those items?
I did.
What were those items?
I picked up 5 items. One was what's called a blood-on spot card. It's a DNA sample from the deceased. I pulled a projectile or bullet. I acquired fingernail clippings from each hand of the deceased, and then pulled head hairs, pulled hairs from the deceased.
Okay. And you agree that the blood sample or the blood spot was for another person to conduct DNA testing?
Yes.
Okay. And this fired bullet, that also was collected for subsequent testing?
Correct.
Okay. And am I correct that you transported these and inventoried these at the BCA?
Yes.
Okay. And were each of these individual items assigned an item number?
Yes.
And would you agree those items are just the 5 items you said, 29.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5?
That's correct.
Okay. And that blood DNA sample, that was the one that you identified as 29.1?
Correct.
And the bullet that you recovered, that was identified as 29.2?
Correct.
And are you aware that that blood sample or that spot was later issued a separate BCA lab item number as item 30?
Yep. Yes.
And that fired bullet was issued a separate BCA lab item number 31?
Yes.
All right. When you collected that fired bullet, you know that it is now affixed with both your item number 29.2 and the BCA lab number 31, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. At this time, the state offers Exhibit 201.
Objection to 201. Exhibit 201 will be admitted.
Agent Peterson, I'm showing you Exhibit 201. Would you recognize this as the fired bullet you collected from the medical examiner's office?
Yes.
You have permission to publish this item on the Elmo. Oh. Now, Agent Peterson, did you have an opportunity to look at this fired bullet?
At the time of my collecting the item?
No, I'm sorry. Recently, as it appears to you here.
Yes, recently I had.
Okay. And did it have, were you able to identify the type of ammunition it is based on your inspection?
Yeah, that appears to be hollow point ammunition.
Okay. Now, are you familiar with hollow point ammunition, given your experience in law enforcement?
Yes.
And are you familiar with what happens when hollow point ammunition hits an object?
Yes.
And what happens?
Generally, it's designed to, the term is mushroom or kind of fold out like you see it appears. And that is to slow the velocity of it as it hits an object, and also it creates kind of a larger wound path and can cause more damage to tissue and organs in a person.
Because what you're saying is when it's designed to slow down, it's actually designed to use the body as drag to slow down.
Right, yes.
And I'd like to turn your attention back to the morning of April 12th. Did you learn that the BCA had received some video evidence regarding this case?
Yes.
And what video evidence, did you review some of that video evidence?
Yes.
What video evidence have you reviewed?
I reviewed body-worn camera video from Officer Potter, Officer Lucky, and Sergeant Johnson.
Okay. Did you also review a squad video?
Yes, the squad video from Officer Lucky's and Officer Potter's squad car.
And did you review the time frame which captured the incident we're all here for today?
Yes.
And you ultimately wrote some reports about your review of those materials, correct?
Correct.
In preparation for trial, did you examine those videos, particularly specific moments or stills of those videos?
Yes.
And those still images isolated specific moments which attracted your attention, am I correct?
Correct.
And when you reviewed those still images, were they fair and accurate sort of excerpts or taken from the videos that we've seen here in trial? Pardon me, that you have reviewed?
That I've reviewed, yes.
Yep. Okay, I now want to go through a series of still images. First, I want to direct your attention to a particular moment as the defendant approaches Daunte Wright's vehicle. Do you recall seeing a moment shown on the squad video which attracted your attention?
Yes.
Okay. What did you perceive occurring at that moment which attracted your attention?
We object to this and want to be heard.
Yes.
So they're going on Sidebar with the radio. Folks that have been in the courtroom know that there's also like a white noise generator. So the audio gets cut for us on the video system, but there's also, I believe in Hennepin County, certainly in federal court, I've heard it myself, they have sort of an uncomfortable sounding white noise hissing system that's supposed to make eavesdropping more difficult because these conversations are supposed to be off the record. I'll hide the title for a second, and you can see Potter is closely involved in this. In a way, this system makes it easier for defendants to hear what's going on because they don't have to. They don't. Normally, they would approach the bar, but here they can just like pop those headphones in and hear whatever this discussion is. So that again, that's a sidebar. Kim Potter's there on the right, in the middle of the three on the defense. So they're still on sidebar here. We're not getting any audio on our side at all. A number of chatters are talking about hollow point bullets. I wasn't aware that Minnesota law enforcement uses hollow points so much.
All right, the objection is overruled. The counsel may continue.
Your Honor, one quick follow-up sidebar.
So they're right back on it again. Once again, they're on sidebar. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, I'll just mention really quick that if you want to take a look at our, sorry, one second. If you want to take a look at our Twitter account, thanks to Alex today, working on the tweets. It's at Unicorn Riot Live, so please give that a follow. We're going to kind of have the play-by-play on there. And please share out our work on unicornriot.ninja. That makes a big difference. We're not a huge media corporation, and passing our work along to other folks and your friends does make a huge difference for our reach. So thank you for considering doing that. So this has been quite a long sidebar. It seemed like it was coming back, but I couldn't really hear what the judge said, and then they went back to it.
Oh, members of the jury, we're just going to take a short 15-minute break, okay? So, have a good break.
All right, so this sidebar has been going on. I'll leave it on here for just a minute in case we can spot something happening, but obviously the jury just got let out, so they're standing for the jury for a second. Hopefully, maybe we'll be able to get something out in the open mic. There's a lot of discussions that do happen which are supposed to happen out of the earshot of the jury, so maybe we'll hear more here.
Okay, you may step down. Sidebar, please.
If we've got any people that can read lips in the chat who want to pick off what the judge is saying, you are welcome to add that to the chat, because we cannot tell what she's saying. There's no audio coming through to us right now. Sometimes you see people cover their mouth. We saw the judge in the Derek Chauvin trial. He was pretty careful about covering his mouth. Maybe it's finally over here. Sounds like we're going to be on hold for a little while, so I'm just going to go over to, again, playing back some of the April 11th footage, and we'll just, you know, when they come back, we'll come right back to it. Should be maybe 10-15 minutes. Thank you all for joining us, everyone. Appreciate your support.
After George Floyd was killed, police were actually shooting at cars with 40mm marker rounds when they were driving by. You know, a lot of these officers are ex-military, they're veterans, and we know in Iraq when people come up to these scenes and they're told to stop, and they don't stop in a specific amount that they're supposed to, we've seen numerous times where the military has killed people. So again, this is the scene here off 66 and Humboldt. We got the police moving in on this side of Humboldt, of 67th. So we're actually on 67th in Humboldt. I shouldn't say 66, although it's the end of the block. So 6645 is the address of the Brooklyn Center Police Department. The police have also come in on that side. I'm not sure if they're actually kettling this whole area. They have said that it's an unlawful assembly, and if you are caught in this area, you will be under arrest. It looks like there's other officers that are on that side as well coming through. You can sort of see their vests. So we're going to move ourselves a little bit further out of the way. Catch another angle of these folks moving up. So again, police have cleared the area basically. They're now making their move up 67th to Humboldt. There's still a gentleman up in the middle of the street, and Police are also coming up this side of the street. Shining their lights into a person's car. Yeah, these are state troopers.
All right, we will. Don't shoot us.
This is a mobile response team from the state trooper. They have an LRAD on the front of their truck.
Did I tell you?
They actually have new vests. They have a Minnesota insignia on the vest. Again, so these are residents that are watching the situation. They live across the street from the police station. The police were shooting munitions towards the building. Still got a gentleman up there, or the person up there with the yellow vest, still in the middle of the ground, sitting there on their knees, with their hands on their head. Most of the crowd is cleared off. Still sort of a large crowd behind where we are. Right now the police are trying to take control of their police station again. Or not again, but right now. The person on the ground with the vest is a protester. They got shot in the face or in the ear with a 40 millimeter marker round, as well as other places in their body. And they still came back to the front line, and they're still there. It looks like they might have sacrificed themselves to get arrested at this point. Police want to move 5 more feet for some reason. We heard from the person earlier. They definitely put their life on the line, basically. They got shot at numerous times on the front line of dozens of munitions, flashbangs, CS gas, triple chasers, diversion, explosives.
So we're watching footage from April 11, 2001, which is in the hours right after Daunte Wright was killed in Brooklyn Center, out in front of the Brooklyn Center Police Department. We are waiting now for trial to come back. We're still waiting on the judge. They've been on sort of an extended private sidebar.
Police have now occupied the apartment building lawn, as well as the street in front of the apartment building, and another house over here on Humboldt Ave in Brooklyn Center. These are actually the state troopers that are doing the occupation right now. They're in the little shiny yellow vests with the Minnesota State insignia on their bulletproof vests. You see a mobile response team state trooper van truck right there. It's got a LRAD, long-range acoustic device on the front that they use to send out a blaring audio beep, or to say unlawful assemblies. And we heard unlawful assemblies being broadcast through some kind of speaker system earlier, where the officer was speaking and then it would replay after he was done speaking. We saw that they have a strategic operations or a special operations vehicle that's actually protecting the precinct. You can see the lights beyond the lights of the state trooper vehicle. Looks like they're coming to arrest the person now. The police are making moves now. Here's the officer that's making those announcements. I don't know if you could hear him. This person in the vest is now getting brought back to the police station. They were super peaceful the whole time. They stood there with their hands up. They took a lot of violence and just took it and kept there with their hands up. They've been out here for Black Lives and against pipelines and other capitalistic and racist endeavors by the institutions that we know of as the state and corporations. That was basically the last person that we know inside that kettle right now. They've been arrested, it looks like. They've been brought back to the station. I'm trying to get you an angle if I can. Looks like they already brought him back in. To be honest, I'm super surprised this strip mall did not get ransacked. There's a Dollar Tree right there. I totally actually expected it to, based off of when the police react to people who are grieving and angry with more aggression, it makes people move around and do other things. And that's what we saw last year, numerous times after police interactions with community after a police killing. So again, this was for Daunte Wright. He was 20 years old, young man, killed by Brooklyn Center police. Looks like they're taking off their gas masks now. No, you're good now. They're taking them off. You see the gas masks?
They're still waiting for court to come back. This is April 11th
They'll
footage.
let the first unit go behind the first, the second one comes up. They'll take theirs off, and then that second one will go back behind them, and then they'll take theirs off. So I think you're okay. Just definitely be wary, because they might come in and try to get you, but I'm here for you too. Looks like the police are taking their gas masks off, as these are the state troopers again. They've sort of settled the situation off of these dispersal orders. People left off of the last one. You heard the order from the captain of the state troopers. If you're done, tap your partner in the front. So then they move back a step. The people who just took their gas masks off move up a step and protect the line. Seeing some of the formations and some of their training. If you want to know more about their training, go to our Twitter feed, UR_ninja. We have information about, and to our website, unicornriot.ninja. We have information about FEMA training manuals of how field force training happens. There's been some updates to that, but there's also new manuals that have been released through the internet. But basically it's the same thing. It showcases how these lines maneuver each other, how the police maneuver through the lines and also make arrests. How you been? Shitty to see you in this situation. Shitty to see you in this situation. Yeah.
Mark, take your mask off. Mark, take your mask off.
So now they're letting the shooters take their mask off. So all the shooters that had the masks on, it's now their turn. Here's a shooter that was in the middle. Yep. Yep. So you can go to our Twitter feed, UR_ninja, for some clips as well as some more information. I think we've been tweeting about defense technologies, which makes and creates the less lethal weaponry and munitions that the police were using today. These are state troopers right now, but they follow along a lot of the same trainings. And if you can go to our Twitter feed and our website, unicornriot.ninja, you'll be able to find FEMA field force training manuals that we've released a few years back that showcase basically what you're seeing here at work. Well, maybe you can't see it, but you can see the reflective shields of the state troopers. So to recap real quick, 20-year-old Daunte Wright, I think father of one, a 2-year-old, was shot and killed today by Brooklyn Center police. Earlier in a stream, we heard his mother talk. We spoke to his sister, and we heard from quite a few community members about their situation, or about what they think the situation is amounting to. There's a police officer right here, or a state trooper right here, that's taking video with their phone. We saw a lot some press are trying to go the other direction to get past the police line, and they said no, you can't, you have to go all the way around. So yeah, we saw a ton of police munitions be shot and used today. We got shot at specifically numerous times. I guess another day as press in Minnesota. At this point, they don't seem to care. Press is here, or matter of fact, they seem to care and they seem to target press. That's my personal feeling at this point. Today we were shot at 3 times at least, probably more, as well as munitions thrown directly at me, where I'm standing not next to protesters. So just a continuation of the police sort of reaction towards press while protests of police killings are happening. So we're going to take the stream down. Again, thank you all for tuning in. This is Nico from Unicorn Riot. Thanks for Chris, Alex, D, and Dan on the back end helping out. I think it was a full team affair. We should have a article up in the next day. We'll probably have some clips on Twitter, I believe. UR_ninja. We'll probably bring those clips over to Facebook. We'll have continuing coverage of live streaming from inside the courtroom tomorrow at about 9 a.m. The Derek Chauvin trial continues. I believe this next week we will see.
All right, well, the judge turned up. We're back live again. This is back in court. I brought it back because I saw the judge coming back, but they're definitely still on sidebar. There's still no audio coming in, so just hang in there, folks. But we're not on the lunch break, but we will go down for the lunch break, and then the stream will come back in the afternoon. So thank you for joining us. While we're waiting on this very long sidebar, it's a very private sidebar, we can't have audio. I'll just pull up the story that Nico referenced on the voiceover. This is our FEMA Field Force crackdown story. And this has actually been very interesting. We reported this way back in 2016. We got this from FOIA requests in North Dakota. And it shows that the Federal Emergency Management Agency does standardize police tactics around the country. And so if you want to learn about how the federal government standardizes what police do in crowd management, including the riot control weapons, the sponge rounds that you saw in the video today, various types of riot control gases, defense technologies, canisters, all of that stuff. We've got the whole PDF in here, and that came from the North Dakota Department of Corrections in an email. And so I have found that over and over, this has been a great story to refer to, and it's really been very informative. It's seriously very informative. So we're still waiting here. I'll put the link in the chats for folks. Thanks for joining us. We're still waiting on sidebar. But anyway, this is very useful, though, because I think that, last summer during all these uprisings, people were surprised, why are the police across America policing protests in all these same ways? And it's because this doctrine's been standardized, and it's a very important part of how policing of crowds works in America today. So that's an important thing that we found in our years of trying to understand policing in this country. So I got the link in the chats there if anybody wants to learn more about that. As we wait. again, I'll just recap as we're waiting for a sidebar that's gone for about half an hour, I think. So we had definitely, disturbing content. We've been kind of moving through the part of the testimony involving medical examiners, and Judge Chu had ordered to not show autopsy photos. So those were withheld from the live stream, but they were shown to the jury. And Dr. Lauren Jackson, an assistant medical examiner at the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office, testified first and sort of walked through those materials, walked through how the bullet, pierced Daunte Wright's heart and lung, and they went over how, it was a, what do you call it? A kind of bullet where it's a hollow point bullet that's like designed to kind of split and crumple. And so computer generated graphics of those fatal injuries were shown, but not any photographs were shown. So they kind of pulled that back, sort of hoping to kind of save some sort of dignity for the family. We also heard from Melissa Lauren, who was a forensic scientist at the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, who was running the team that sort of went down there to the scene and kind of documented things, walked through, pretty disturbing material, blood spatters in the vehicle and things like that. So it was definitely disturbing material for sure. One thing that we did notice was an earlier sidebar kind of went to that the defense attorneys tried to bring up something about a scale, and then the state kind of cut that off, and then it went to sidebar and didn't come back. So again, the defense is clearly leaning on sort of a drug panic excuse, sort of trying to get the jury to think about drugs, I guess, as opposed to the facts of the shooting itself. And that's been a pretty consistent tack they've been on most days. And we saw that as well, like I said, with Earl Gray was the attorney for Geronimo Yanez in the Philando Castile case, which was one of the first major police shooting cases that we covered. That one, went out on Facebook Live when it happened, or most of it did. So that was really quite shocking, quite graphic, quite disturbing. But Geronimo Yanez was able to get out of legal consequences and gave all these statements to the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension investigators, saying that he thought that because he smelled the odor of marijuana, that that meant that his life was in danger, that was an inference. Although people have pointed out that the jury in the Yanez case was not able to read the full BCA transcripts. They were just given little parts of it in that trial. Very dubious. But that's how Earl Gray, executed his defense strategy in the Yanez case. So I really think it's strongly likely that's sort of what the tack is here, because we've been seeing them come back to it day after day, every day. So that's just been a very strong element of the defense case, is the drug war panic that happens. I'll just mention as well, in my personal experience, I have seen personally, firsthand at the Minnesota State Capitol, I have seen how lobbyists from the police associations, like the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, I've seen how they try to keep medical conditions out of the medical marijuana bill. I've seen how the police professional associations lobby to emphasize and escalate the war on drugs, to keep it escalated, to keep it at full tilt. And so the war on drugs and policing in Minnesota, while national cannabis policy has been shifting significantly, Minnesota has been slow rolling it. The Minnesota Senate, with its Senate Majority Leader Paul Gazelka, who's looking at a run for governor, they have really slow rolled cannabis policy out of sync with what's happened in a lot of other states. Because unless it's a constitutional amendment, there's no ballot initiatives in this state. And law enforcement lobbies generally have been hardline about drug policy. And so we see that, permutations down into court cases like this, where, cannabis is seen, it's very famously known, that, if there's an odor of cannabis, detected, right, that can be, a predicate for someone getting pulled over, for example. And that's been an issue. I know in Massachusetts, that was a major issue. One of the younger members of the Kennedy political family made it very clear that, he opposed cannabis legalization in Massachusetts because not having the odor be a predicate to search someone's car was something that he was opposed to. He didn't want that policy to change. So it just comes up over and over and over again. And Earl Grey and Paul Eng in the defense bring it up over and over and over again that the war on drugs is linked intricately to state violence and to police violence. And that's a major theme in this case. It can't be avoided. It's pretty significant. And I think that it calls into question, like things I've seen firsthand, these police lobbyists trying to keep every possible detail of the war on drugs at the highest possible tempo is very common. So it looks like they're coming back now. Thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate your support.
All right. The objection is sustained. Is counsel ready for the jury?
Sure, Your
Honor. Okay. Thank you, counsel. Or deputy. Oh, you may approach.
So while we're waiting here, I will mention that the defense tried to bring up something about a scale in the car, and the state did manage to get that kind of barred from the case because Kim Potter couldn't have known that. Like, that's an irrelevant thing to the case, but they're going to try to keep pulling in whatever they can, looking for anything as defense attorneys do. So that was something that did go down in a subtle way today.
Yes. Okay, please be seated. All right, Mr. Larson, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. When we left off, we were discussing your review of the video evidence in this case. Do you recall that?
Yep. Yes.
And are you aware of an additional video that was created in preparation for trial using these independent videos, which essentially was a synced up composite video of Officer Potter's body-worn camera, Officer Sergeant Johnson's body-worn camera, and the squad still video?
Yes.
And that was it was a fair and accurate composite video of these three video sources, correct?
What I reviewed, yes.
Yes. The state offers Exhibit 204.
Is 204 already in tape? Is 204 is a photo of what?
204 is a composite video which has never been shown with this jury. It's the synced up video of Officer Potter and Sergeant Johnson's body-worn cameras along with the squad video, which separately illuminates the location of all of the individuals.
All right. The objection is overruled, and you may show that.
Now, Sergeant Johnson, during the playing of this exhibit, I may pause the video several times and ask you several questions, okay?
Okay.
Please publish.
We will be here in a second.
Sergeant Johnson, or pardon me, strike that. Agent Peterson, right now you see two images on your screen.
Yes.
And in the top left corner, do you know where that video source is from?
That is from Officer Potter's body camera.
Okay. And the image on the right is going to be Sergeant Johnson's?
Yes.
Okay. In a moment, a third image is going to appear on the screen. Is that a squad video of the same time frame?
It should be, yes.
Okay. This image begins at 2:01. Okay, please start. Pause the video. Sergeant, pardon me, Agent Peterson, at the time you we paused, you talked about observing something that was noteworthy to you about how Officer Potter approached the vehicle. Do you recall what that was? Some conduct that Officer Potter had, which noted.
Yes, but I got not seeing it in where the video is.
Pardon me. When it occurs, could you please identify? We'll pause the video.
Yes.
Continue to go.
Right there.
Pause. What did you observe?
It appeared to me in watching that there was a manipulation in some way of her holster.
Why did that attract your attention?
I've seen it before on other videos I've watched of officers. I myself have done that when I was on patrol. Just caught my attention.
Yep. And when you're on patrol, what exactly are you believing is occurring in the video?
So I carried the same type of holster that Officer Potter used, a level 2, and it would be my practice at times to, when I was making a traffic stop, unlatch the first level of protection or safety on the holster, just to, I guess, give myself a little of an advantage should I need to draw.
Okay. So essentially it's a way to, if you had to draw your firearm, you're preparing to do it quickly?
Yes.
The objection is sustained. I don't believe he has answered.
Why would you do that?
It would just make drawing the firearm easier, more efficient.
Okay. You can continue to play the video.
You're under arrest, Daunte.
You got a warrant.
You're not doing that?
Don't. You said stop, bro. Don't do it. Don't do
I'll tease you!
Just stay back.
I'll tease you! Taser, taser, taser!
Ah, he shot me.
Holy shit! I just shot him.
You dead?
Yes!
Okay.
I grabbed the wrong fucking gun! I shot him! Oh my god!
Jim, sit down.
Oh my god!
PI Access 63rd and Captain's Right, Flexion 38 stop, start north on the red.
Starting north on the red, then you repeat your first turn, please.
Agent Peterson, when you reviewed that video, did you write reports as to what you observed?
Yes.
And when you took those notes, you were watching these videos because you knew that you were conducting or participating in the conducting of a criminal investigation, correct?
Correct.
And certain observations were important to your investigation, correct?
Correct.
Did you take note in your review of the video of whether Sergeant Johnson's head was visible on Kim Potter's body-worn camera during the incident?
I did take note of that, yes.
And was it visible throughout the incident?
His head.
Object to this as an opinion of the witness. The body camera speaks for itself. All of them do.
Okay. Is overruled, and you may answer the question.
Agent Peterson, was it possible to see Sergeant Johnson's head throughout the incident from Officer Potter's body-worn camera?
There were times where you could see his head, yes.
Okay. And during those times, what direction was his head pointed?
Towards the interior of the vehicle.
Okay. Was it possible to see his face?
At times, yes.
Okay. At the time of the shot, was it possible to see his face?
I recall seeing the top of his head and not his face.
Okay. So the video revealed that he was looking down?
Yes.
When you examined the video, did you recall examining Officer Lucky's position at various points during the incident?
Yes.
Okay. Could you describe what you observed with regard to the location of Officer Lucky's feet, shoulders, elbows?
At what point?
Throughout the 10, 12, 14-second period of the struggle with Mr. Wright.
He's standing outside the vehicle on the driver's side and does reach in to try to restrain Mr. Wright.
Did you observe that his feet and shoulders remained out of the vehicle?
Objected on his leading, Your Honor. The video speaks for itself.
The objection is sustained.
What with regard to, were you able to observe where Officer Lucky's shoulders were throughout this incident?
At what time, Your Honor?
Your Honor, I do have still images if you'd like me to show them.
Oh, just a minute, please. Would you like to finish your question and make it more precise as to time?
Mr. Miller, could you please put up on the video the time of 2:01 and 58 seconds? Showing you now Exhibit 204. It's paused at 2:01 and 58 seconds. Would you agree?
Yes.
Where is Officer Lucky's body at this moment?
It is outside the driver's compartment of the vehicle.
Okay. Where are his hips?
They're slightly behind the open door, driver's door.
And can you infer where his elbows are?
Well, on the bottom squad video, you can see his right arm is outside the vehicle, and at the top left video, you can just make that his elbow appears on this video to be outside the vehicle.
Okay. Can we go ahead 2 seconds to 202 and 00? Okay, you'd agree the video is now paused at 2:02 and 0 seconds, correct?
Correct.
Can you see where Officer Lucky's body is at this time?
From this video, the bottom video there from the squad camera, it appears that his feet and legs are outside the vehicle on the pavement, and his torso is kind of leaning towards the open door.
If you look at the top left corner in Officer Potter's body on camera, are Officer Lucky's shoulders inside the vehicle or outside the vehicle?
Based on the view of this video, it does not appear that his shoulders are in the vehicle.
Okay, let's go ahead 1 second. Officer Peterson, I've just moved ahead 1 second. Would your answers remain the same for this still image?
Yes.
All right. Now I want to turn back to 2:01 and 59 seconds, and I have another couple questions for you, sir. Okay. Did you also examine Sergeant Johnson's position at various points during this incident?
Your Honor, I object to this. The video speaks for itself. The time speaks for itself. This officer's view of it should not be, the jury's the one that decides it's not this officer. He's not an expert of videos.
All right. Counsel, will you please?
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. So we're hearing from a BCA agent named Brent Peterson about, how he was sort of analyzing what had happened, sort of the steps that are happening there. And so you heard defense attorney Earl Gray sort of saying that the special agent isn't an expert at video, which kind of sounds like a reach. But, the defense is going to try to find any out that they can to sort of avoid having these narratives laid out to the jury. So we're seeing more of that. That seems to, kind of be the pattern with how the objections are moving. And that sort of, definitely kind of stops the state's momentum and just kind of laying out what seems like a fairly straightforward situation to understand. So we're seeing that. Again, this is a sidebar. We can't hear the audio. So thank you all for tuning in. Special thanks to Alex today. I really appreciate the help laying in those, show the Twitter account there. So just hit up Unicorn Riot Live because, again, this is very disturbing material. I really want to underscore that you don't feel obliged to have to watch every step of this. But if you do want to follow the play-by-play, head there. Thank you.
Members of the jury, we're going to break for lunch, okay? So we'll start up again at about 1:30.
Cool. So they're going to be off till 1:30. So again, I'll just sort of recap what we've had here. So this has been for a moment.
Okay, you may step down.
Your Honor, may I, Paul and I talked with the special agent during this lunch break because I want to make sure that I know what he's going to say, and we sure haven't found anything out by now. I'd like to talk to him.
I don't think there's anything to prohibit you from talking to the agent. All right. Why don't we take a lunch break and let's everybody hear. You know what my problem is. You've got a witness telling the jury what is on a piece of evidence, which is the evidence is the video. And it seems like this is more like a final argument material where you stop the video and say, look, both of his feet are on the ground. He's not hanging out of the car. Why do you need a supposed expert witness to describe what's on a video?
I did not qualify Agent Peterson as an expert. He did review these videos and knows details of them because it was part of his investigation. And in fact, review of these videos was a significant part of this investigation, as it is now with many different criminal investigations, including ones involving officer-involved shootings.
Okay, but
So,
when you call him a DCA or, given his position, the jury's going to get the impression that he is an expert. So,
Your Honor, I just wanted to clarify that the state's intent this morning was to introduce a series of still images which show that Johnson's body is completely out of the vehicle. These were selected to provide efficient and clear testimony about that fact. I understand the court's ruling excluding those. So then, at this point, the state is going to go through those several seconds of video that have been introduced for the jury so that they can see and the state can make that very simple point that has been observed by Agent Peterson. It has been more difficult using the video as opposed to the still images, and I apologize that I can't do it more efficiently than I was intending to do it this morning with the still images. Thank you.
What they neglect to mention, Your Honor, is that taser, I'm going to tase you, then a few seconds go by, I'm going to tase you again, and then taser. When the taser was yelled, that's the signal for the officers to try and get out of the car. Right after she yelled that, she shot and they're moving out. So to impeach Johnson, which they didn't use this video to impeach him like they're supposed to, they didn't do that. Now they're trying to impeach him by some witness saying that, no, he was out of the car. That's ridiculous. That's just not good evidence.
okay, the still photographs, I think, are a little, they don't give the whole picture because the timing, it doesn't show the timing. So the video has already been shown. It shows the timing. It shows everybody's body position at very specific times and when it happened and what their body positions were. So I excluded the photographs for two reasons. Number one, a number of them were not provided to the defense beforehand. And secondly, it was duplicative of what has already been submitted, which is the video. And third, it can be misleading because it's a shot at a certain period of time that doesn't show the entire sequence.
And I would only say, Your Honor, that still imagery does not somehow prevent the jury from reviewing the entire video in the manner in which the court suggested, but it does often have the ability to impeach some sort of sense that there was a fog of war where Johnson didn't know where his body was located. It specifically can rebut that notion that he was going to be being dragged on this incident. That was a significant point. It's basically defense number 2 that we've had to hear about all of last week. So the fact that there is still imagery that can illuminate the credibility of that claim is what the state has been attempting to do during the testimony phase of this case. Certainly it's going to be brought up in closing argument, but the fact that we can do that in closing argument doesn't abrogate the fact that we can also use a witness to illuminate and to describe video evidence, which is a significant aspect of any investigation involving body-worn camera. Respectfully, Your Honor.
Your Honor, if they wanted to impeach Mr. Johnson, Major Johnson, they could have cross-examined him on it, like a lawyer should do, and not come back later without showing us photos and use still photos. That's not fair, and it's not admissible. It's simply not.
Your Honor, if I may at that point, I'm trying not to have multiple lawyers argue, I get it, but if I were impeaching with a prior inconsistent statement, that might be one thing with Major Johnson. But as you recall, in chambers, I raised an objection to lay witnesses being unnoticed experts. And so I didn't object at trial because the court had said they could do that because they get trained. But he nonetheless offered an opinion, and so we get to impeach that opinion without having to ask him, and that's what we've been doing in part about that. And that's why I think Mr. Gray's concern about proper form of impeachment is just wrong. We're just attacking what appears to be the underlying basis for his opinion.
Well, aren't you supposed to do that on rebuttal? So.
I know of no requirement that we save that for rebuttal, Your Honor, because we rebut their case, and he was our witness. But regardless, I don't know if
All right, we're kind of getting off base here. I mean, we're talking about these still photographs. They're out. I'm not going to reconsider my decision on that. Okay. The video evidence is the evidence. So that's my ruling on that, and there's no need for this officer to testify as to what the video evidence shows. You can show that to the jury. Okay. All right.
All right. I think we're out on lunch there. Thank you all for joining us. So the lunch break should go until about 1:30 Central Time. Just to clarify, people in the chat were asking if the jury heard that whole exchange, and they did not. They were already out. When the judge stands, that's a good indicator that the jury is either coming or going. So this was only heard in front of these attorneys and obviously the public listening in. So it seems, that a big part of the defense strategy is about trying to raise the issue of, one second, please. So the defense is trying to raise this strategy of talking about how, trying to get the idea in the jury's mind that Officer Johnson seemed like he was about to be dragged along, so Potter had to do this. It seems like that's sort of what they're going for. And then the state was sort of saying, oh, well, these pictures can prove that's not the case. And they were trying to have that special agent walk through the video because they weren't allowed as the pictures got kicked out. So I'll just mention that there's an Akira Kurosawa film called Rashomon, which recounts the retelling of a story involving samurai from several different angles, and there's different perspectives and angles. And whenever something kind of comes down to like such an odd thing about views and angles, it's just very Rashomon-like. That's just what comes to mind. So if folks have any quick questions, I can try to answer them. Otherwise, we're going to go down off the live stream, and we'll come back in the afternoon. Thank you so much. Alex has been handling the live tweets, which you do really appreciate. Thank you, Alex. Nico has also been helping out this morning as well. And you can take a look at our Kim Potter trial landing page if you want to learn more about the case. I will pull up the website. One moment. here's our website, unicornriot.ninja. So we've been updating the trial page as we go along, and we have a lot of stuff in there, like the jury instructions, the witness list. I'll just mention that the state's witness list has a lot of misspellings. You can see the witness list down here in this upper area. The witness list has a lot of misspellings, but we've been trying to catch those as people spell out their names as they testify. So if you click on the case file link up here at the top, you can also see a lot of different motions. The defense is also trying to object to stuff like, when the state mentions the police union, stuff like that. That was coming up earlier today as well. Not today, but earlier as well. Earlier in the morning, we had Dr. Lauren Jackson, who works at the Hennepin County Medical Examiner. He walked through some of the autopsy materials, and then those were not displayed to the public because those were, regarded by the judge as like disturbing and sort of harmful for the family for that to be out there in the public. So the only thing that we really saw was sort of computer representation showing how this bullet with a hollow point, penetrated Daunte Wright's heart and his lungs. He basically bled out very quickly. Jackson said that he could have been unconscious within 10 or 15 seconds. So, that kind of raises the strong possibility that Wright didn't even necessarily intend to drive the car. He just lost control of his foot because he was dying. That seemed to be pretty clear, I think, from the case. Then we heard Melissa Lauren, who's a forensic scientist at the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. She testified as well to kind of the process that the BCA went through with the case. So all of that was put sort of out there. And again, the defense attorneys are looking for whatever they can for Potter. And so they keep, coming back to references about marijuana. They asked the medical examiner about, I think it's nanograms per milliliter, which was nothing too unusual, I guess. But again, because Earl Grey was able to get Geronimo Yanez off on killing Philando Castile when Yanez gave a pretty strange interview to the BCA where he said he was such afraid of his life because of the smell of cannabis from this vehicle. It seems pretty likely that Earl Grey is trying to do a similar attack here. That seems pretty clear because it keeps coming up every day. So we were just hearing, that the judge is ruling off photographs, and so the state is trying to have the special agent step through the videos that he was reviewing, but obviously Earl Grey is trying to knock that one out, although it also sounds like the still images may not have been provided to the defense ahead of time. And so again, in American courts, the prosecution is supposed to give the defense all the exhibits. Once in a while, the state made some mix-ups with exhibits in the trial of Derek Chauvin as well. So those kind of mix-ups do happen, and that was also a reason that the images got knocked out. At least that's sort of what the judge said, seemingly in the last few minutes here. So I just wanted to mention that. Okay, so if anybody else had questions, we can try to jump to those. I think I would just say, someone was commenting that she thought they weren't streaming or whatever. I mean, I do think everyone in the court is pretty aware that this material is going out to the public. I think that I would just say that I think they're aware that it's, a public case. So I don't think they're surprised that there's cameras. I mean, if you notice, there's actually a camera right in front of the judge's bench as well. I'll just mention that. So there's that. Let's see if anybody else has, any other questions to kind of throw out there. I can kind of try to touch on those. I don't think we have too much else. So again, we will come back in the afternoon. So if it's 12:40 Central, so we'll sort of bring it up about 5-10 minutes before they start for the day. Hopefully they start quickly. There was a long sidebar. We aren't exactly sure what the longer sidebar was about. I think. If you give me 1 second. Yeah, besides that, it was just that there was definitely an objection earlier, which wasn't the long sidebar, but an earlier sidebar where the defense was trying to say, oh, there was a scale in the car, and they were trying to introduce that. And then that pretty much got boxed out of the case by the state. So that was another aspect of today's happenings. So let's just see if there's any other. I don't think I'm getting any other questions from the chat. So we do really appreciate your support. I really appreciate the friendly comments. Everyone try to be respectful. Don't feed the trolls. If people are posting objectionable stuff, just kind of flag it with some symbols or asterisks or whatever. We don't, trolls feed on conflict. I'll leave it at that. So we thank you very much, and we appreciate your support. Again, I'll just circle back. We were running this footage from earlier, from April 11th. Let me just pull that up again. I just want to throw a couple things out for you to highlight for you. So one moment.
Ending of the prosecution, laying their case, and then the defense will bring their witnesses, is my guess, this next week and the next few.
We'll hold the audio, but I just want to show you a few things here. I'll just sort of scrub back on this. So you have these, police formations, right? And there is a sort of a standardized equipment level to policing in the United States. And again, I think this is very important because we saw such aggressive policing last summer. And this was the first night, right? I think later in the trial, I think we're going to run some of the other footage for you to kind of show you some of the policing that happened on the other nights, which was even more aggressive than this one. And so if you see here, obviously they have the batons, they have face masks. These ones are all wearing, gas masks as well. There's definitely like chemical munitions. See, people got exposed to a lot of chemical munitions over the next several nights in Brooklyn Center. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that because, again, if I can just sort of step along through this, there is a standardized doctrine in the United States, and it is true that this doctrine is trained up by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and the Center for Domestic Preparedness prepares this thing called field force operations. And so if you want to learn about how this modern policing system works, we have this entire 2016 report that I wrote with Chris, and we really sort of stepped through like all these different sort of arrest tactics, formations for controlling mass arrests, for breaking up protests. You see this standardized equipment. This is the 40 millimeter round launcher. You can see that black round there on the right. We saw a blue one get displayed in the video as well. So that's become very common, those so-called marker rounds, sponge rounds. There's also shotgun rounds. I'm not sure if those were used in Brooklyn Center, but they certainly have been used in other protests. You see those hand-tossed munitions, as well as many different types of heavy-duty pepper spray, essentially, or other chemical dispersant things that are sort of designed like fire extinguisher type designs. So if you want to take a look at this, the Field Force Operations Manual. This again, Federal Emergency Management Agency. While it has a general it's most people are aware of FEMA as a sort of a like Hurricane Katrina, emergency management, natural disasters, so on and so forth. But it is really worth noting that they actually work very closely with, they're a part of the Department of Homeland Security. Even from the beginning of FEMA as an organization, it was actually pretty heavily oriented towards things like crowd control, kind of secretive military connections. And while a lot of that is kind of mythologized in American popular culture, documents like this really do show you that there is an element of protest control that is actually baked into security, that is actually part of what FEMA works on. It's really not just, hurricane preparedness and coordinating, water supplies and Hurricane Katrina. There is this other side to FEMA, and this large document, which is 135 pages, is actually incredibly valuable because it will show you how they train all these local police forces to do these larger formations, and they do that at the Center for Domestic Preparedness. So that is a document that we obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request and published back in 2016. It talks about crowd dynamics, distinguishing what they call everyday citizens, professional protesters, and anarchists. Because, of course, there are many government documents that specifically demonize anarchists. They're talking about protesters using intelligence and countermeasures, protester tactics. So, again, that is a FEMA training doctrine that really does go out there. And so it's just that you see so many echoes of the material in this manual in the way that protests are policed in the United States, including the April 11th protest. So I just wanted to highlight that, because what we try to do, especially in the winter when there are fewer protests to cover, is we actually try to learn more about how protesting works in the United States, the policies, the funding, and so forth. So I'll just, if you want to learn more about the April 11th protest specifically, that info is right here. This was our post we put up on April 12th this spring. I'll just run I'm just going to run a really short video, if I can see it on my console, if you give me one moment. Another investigative piece that we did, which I thought was pretty nice. Nico looked at this one called Shame Games. And so I think that when you take a really careful look at the police body cams and stuff like that, you can learn a lot about how the police interact with each other, and how they really don't like how Sergeant Dubuque, they really didn't like the attitude that he had taken with the community, and so they were disparaging him, and then that popped up in this kind of shocking set of videos that we obtained through data requests. And again, so we work hard trying to bring those data requests out. So I'll also go to, so this report we ran back in February. Our contributor Sam Richards obtained Spy Patrol aircraft footage. So I'll just run that one, and then we'll go down for lunch. This is just a short, like 2-minute video, but it shows the advanced technology, infrared technology that gets deployed against, peaceful assemblies. Even when nothing in particular is happening, they're still going to use that heavy aviation to kind of monitor people, sort of track people from a distance using these advanced technologies. And certainly we've seen back in Minnesota very aggressive use of aviation, lots of aircraft flying around like night after night. And aircraft is very psychologically disturbing. It is well known to the federal government, to the Pentagon, to the state governments, that aircraft affect the population psychologically, but they do not talk publicly about those effects, right? They don't want to address that all of these measures that they use, whether it's riot control equipment and scary Darth Vader looking equipment, or noisy helicopters, that all of this stuff affects the psychology of the public at large. It's a way of influencing people's perceptions. And I just think that should be highlighted. Like, that is a significant element of why these things are used. They're not just, they don't just choose to design police armor and the colors that they choose for purely practical reasons. There are also psychological reasons that are in play, and that's part of the design of the government and of police equipment and police tactics. So I just wanted to mention that, because these are all, significant issues. So those are just some of the things that we kind of, apart from this one specific tragic, event. These are some of the bigger picture issues that we've tried to call attention to, tried to bring coverage to, tried to bring you the data to. And so if you take a look at our website, we have lots of stuff like that. You can search around and so forth. So thank you all for joining us. Again, I'm Dan. Thank you for Nico for helping out. Thanks for Alex for working on those live tweets. And so, please support our work. Please donate if you can. And please share our material out to your friends. And we'll be back in the afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. I really do appreciate your support today. Thank you.
Thank you.